Hello and welcome to the Mother Room. This is Clara, and thank you for joining us. Um, yeah, coming live to you from Melbourne. I've got my good friend with me here, Tristan Jones, and he's joining us for the Mother Room. I actually asked him to talk with me at the beginning of the pandemic, and obviously things have been a bit crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And maybe I'll let you explain how things have been like for you, and I can go through how things have been like for me. How are you, Tristan? What have you been doing?
I'm good. I think I've been, I can't really sort of complain too much. The pandemic situation is obviously what it is. I think everyone's probably sick of hearing it. I know everyone here. Where is this the first time we've had two people in Melbourne on your thing talking?
No, I had another one. Anthony Pepper. I spoke to him
Oh,
about the RPG, but
cool.
he wasn't a creator. He's a fan.
But he's still
Um,
here in Melbourne.
yeah, he's still here in Melbourne.
Cool. So
Yeah.
have with the pandemic restrictions and everything in place then, or is this the first stage 4 interview that you've had?
This is the first stage 4 interview I've had.
Okay, so this is interesting because, like, I don't think I don't think there's a lot of people that sort of have any idea what
Yeah,
we're under right here. So,
stage
like, for those who
4.
don't know, yeah, okay. So, for anyone watching, like, who might be from elsewhere, not Australia, because everywhere in Australia currently is looking at Victoria right now. Melbourne, Victoria, we're in what is called stage 4 restriction, which means we are only allowed outside the house for 1 hour once a day. You're only allowed to send one person to get shopping once a day during that hour. You're not allowed to go more than 5 kilometers from home unless it's for caregiving purposes or partners. And we have a curfew of 8 p.m. What else have we got? Is that where we've got this in place for 6 weeks, supposedly. I suspect it's probably going to go a little bit longer.
I think there were earlier plans to extend it,
Yeah, I think,
depending
well,
on
we're
the
going to find
number,
out tomorrow. Yeah,
because
because
I think the death
our,
toll's gone down to no, like I think it was like 70, up to 76 cases a day, and then there
yeah,
were 11 deaths just recently. Yeah.
yeah. It was a decent. I say decent, but compared to numbers we've had in the past, today is good because we have gone back to going down again. But my understanding was that we wouldn't be getting out of this sort of situation until our chief health officer, I don't know whether, I'm sure every area around the world has a different version of this person, but our state premier has this Professor Brett Sutton,
Mm.
and he's the chief health advisor. And he's basically sort of said that until we get to below 50 cases consistently, I think for a week, he was saying,
Hmm.
or it's like 3 days straight of below 40. The current restrictions will pretty much stay what they are. Oh, we have to, like, if you're going outside, you have to wear a mask,
Yeah.
which kind of, it's become commonplace now anyway.
Yeah, for those people, especially because we've got a lot of people overseas watching, we do
Mm.
not have an issue with the current restrictions. Like they have to be done to
Yeah,
keep the
yeah.
pandemic under control. We don't have a problem with wearing masks. We don't think that this is a hoax. This is very serious.
So that
Um,
said, there were protests today, and we've had a couple of people, cause trouble, but it's in
yeah,
such a small number. Like, some of the videos and things I've seen from the States, it's nothing compared to that.
yeah. So it's like a bunch of like very small group of conspiracy theorists. I think there were around the same amount of people at the beginning when they were protesting 5G
Yeah,
at the beginning of the
yeah,
pandemic. So,
yeah, that's pretty much it.
it's a low number, and we do not identify with them, so please don't bring it up.
Yeah, and it's a minority too. Like, I know Victorians are getting sick of it, because it's just mentally draining on people.
Mm,
Um, I see it and hear it every day. My partner, we and I were talking about it earlier,
mm,
and I can see it. It is definitely mentally. tolling on all kinds of people for various different reasons, but we're enduring because we know that's what we have to do. And I get phone calls and things from friends interstate, all sort of checking in, and the general kind of consensus around the rest of the country is that they just can't believe what this kind of police state that we're living under. But we're all fine. Like we just have to do it.
Yeah.
We don't like it, but we accept it, and it's kind of like, all right, well, we don't want to have to keep doing this, and this is the best way out of it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we just suck it
Exactly.
up.
That's right.
But to answer your question, I'm fine. Like as far as all this goes, I was a little bit kind of on edge about it like a little while ago, but then I had a big long chat with my partner and a couple of friends and things, and we did kind of come to the conclusion that this hasn't really affected my world. I have a day job at a bookshop in town, and we have an online department, and we're doing stock take and everything. So it's great because we can just go in there and do that, and we don't have public coming in to sort of slow things down.
Mm.
So I still get to ride my bike to work, and I get outside. I get an hour of exercise at least every day on top of my allocated hour. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. And I can come home and do my work here, and
Mm.
that's what I've been doing forever. So I
Mm.
don't really know any different. And other illustrator friends living here in Melbourne have said the same thing. This is interesting for us because we've known this lifestyle for years, and we're pretty okay with it. But seeing other people affected by it, obviously affects us because we care for a lot of these people.
Mm.
So it's interesting, but that's me. I mean, you were telling me what it's been like for you, and I can't I can't even get my head around it, to be honest. It's
Um,
amazing.
yeah. For me, things have been a bit crazy. For the past
Yeah,
month, I've been sewing masks nonstop for 14 hours a day, and only
yeah.
it's just slowed down. But now I'm doing volunteer work. So I was selling masks on my website because the Age did an article on me, and it blew up. And then I got
Oh wow,
interviewed by ABC and by South China Post. So I went international. It's just crazy. So,
that's amazing.
yeah. Um, and it hasn't affected me much in the way as other people, except, I lost my job. And then lockdown happened, but I'm a permitted worker, so I still get to do all of those things, travel to work, go
Yep,
home. I still get to see my workers, so I haven't been completely alone.
that's
Um,
great.
so I've been just getting in a lot of like binge watching Netflix.
Well, see, yeah, see, this is something else I don't think a lot of other people realize, and this ties into a lot of what's been going on. Obviously, coincidentally, what's been going on right now is like, we just found out. The writing was on the wall, really, but we just officially had it announced that our country's in recession.
Mm,
Or I think it's actually a depression, technically, but
yeah,
it's officially called a recession.
yeah,
So of course, it's all a bit touch and go financially for people, and
mm,
things are probably going to get worse. But
mm,
it's reached a point now with just the way the virus has been handled here. Businesses have had to shut down. The whole country got locked down. I don't know if people are aware of this internationally, but our whole country went into lockdown back in
yeah,
March, and we came out of that, I think, in June. Was it 2 months? It was 6 weeks, I think, of
yeah,
stage 3,
yeah,
and that decimated businesses. Um, and we went on to this welfare scheme essentially called JobKeeper.
mm,
I actually thought I'd lost my day job. Fortunately, my boss sort of found a way to sort of keep me on, and then JobKeeper kicked in.
mm-hmm,
This scheme JobKeeper kicked in, so I was in the clear. But the thing with JobKeeper is that a lot of people were leaving their jobs to go on Job Seeker
mm,
because the Job Seeker benefits were better than JobKeeper.
yeah.
I
Well, that's because the workplaces were supposed to supplement the pay, and they weren't.
Yeah,
Because like
um,
people can't, they're not earning any money, so
that's it. That's it. So it's a really, really awful place to be in financially, and I'm sure there's much worse around the world. I'm sure there's probably just equals around the world. But it was one of those things where I would rather hold on to some kind of financial security, so that when this ends, I will at least, hopefully, if the business doesn't suffer through the next few months, have a form of income to go back to while I work on my own things to get them off the ground, and hopefully eventually sort of transition one to the other. Because I used to draw full time. People know this. Like, I used to draw full time, and I want to go back to doing that. But the way the world is now, you got to do what you got to do, and you know exactly how that is, and it's devastating seeing all of this, like businesses going under, people losing their jobs. A friend of mine is essentially, she can't get job seeker. She was working in hospitality, so of course she's been laid off. She's working in like 3 bars and a bottle shop and things like that. She doesn't qualify for anything. She's from the UK, so she's terrified she's going to get deported. And it's just mind blowing. But then again, there are people dying. It's like,
So my in-laws were trapped on one of those cruise liners off the coast of Uruguay, and they were the first to catch COVID-19, and they spent so much money trying to get back to Australia. We had like days where we were like negotiating with their like government people to try to get them to come back here.
And I heard that was a nightmare, because I listened to the radio every day, and there would be people ringing in from. I think people actually rang in from that boat to ABC radio.
Yeah, that was my in-laws.
You're joking?
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
Yeah, so they were on the front.
World.
Yeah, they were on the front page of the paper as well. It was pretty crazy.
Wow.
We were lucky enough to see them because they ended up doing their quarantine stint in Melbourne. And once they finished, they had to go to their flight, but they had a couple of hours, so they came and saw us, and we social distanced and wore masks. We couldn't hug them even after them being trapped on a boat for like weeks on end. It was really nuts. So like,
but this is the world now, right?
Yeah, it's very serious, and like both of my in-laws are doctors, so like there's no joke about this whole thing. Yeah, so it's like, I guess, like for us, stage 4 lockdown, we don't really get to see anyone. It's a ghost town out there. Businesses are closed down.
It really is. It's great riding my bike through there, but like that'll change.
Yeah, it sucks. Like everyone's lost a lot of opportunities for work and money.
Yep. And I get it. This is why people are protesting and getting angry at the government and everything else. But
it's not their fault. It's lack of preparation, probably. But no one really foresaw this. And everyone, look at the rest of the world right now. Everyone's struggling. So it's not like we're doing the worst or anything.
No, if anything, we're doing quite well comparatively. It's just that the problem is a lot of people don't see beyond, or don't, a lot of something I've noticed about Australians in general is like it's very insular, and this is from every time I go overseas and come back. What I notice is Australia has a real, in general, not everyone obviously, but there's a real thing here where I don't think we realize how good we've got it here. And obviously that's not everyone. There's terrible things that happen here, and there are people, suffering and everything else, but I don't think people realize how good we've got it. And that plays pretty hard into, I think, the general kind of vibe here in Melbourne right now.
Well, the very ableist attitude coming from people. I've got heaps of people who are immunocompromised who haven't left their house since the pandemic even started. So
yeah, exactly. It's an invisible thing, and people can't empathize or sympathize. And people who can't sympathize, that's an indictment against humanity, really. Because obviously empathy requires being able to to be able to feel that, and some people can't feel that because they're not immunocompromised or they've never had an issue with their health. So if they can't sympathise, then probably a bunch of sociopaths walking around.
Yeah, that's right.
And let's be honest, that's probably the case with a few of them anyway. But we'll leave.
On the topic of sociopaths who can't seem to empathize, Greg Land.
That was a segue. You said it.
Well, I'm not shy about calling things out. Frankly.
No, look, I think I've implied that it might be a possibility. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm just going to put it out there. He's a bit of a cunt. You just, like, artist integrity, you just don't do that. Like, I can't imagine, like, being at school, copying someone's work, being at uni, copying someone's work and trying to hand it in, going to a gallery and copying someone's work and trying to pass it off as your own.
In academia, if you get found out doing this kind of stuff, even on a minimal scale, it's the end of your career. Like I mean, I'm assuming everyone watching this knows exactly what the situation is. The thing about it is, and the thing that bothers me, I don't like, the past few years I've kind of, I've gotten older. I had this isn't sort of, I haven't really sort of spoken about this with a lot of people, but people personally, I've told people about, and I think we've spoken about this before, but like a lot of people don't know this, but at work, I got bitten by a heroin addict who we caught stealing, ironically, given the conversation. And I had to go and get every test under the sun, including, like, when I got in there and the doctors were like, we need to get you an HIV test pronto. Like, everything just started, flashing. Like, it was one of the worst ways to have a revelatory experience. And it took a long time for those tests to come through. I went and had the blood tests. I got bitten on a Sunday. I went in and got the blood test done on the Monday morning. They weren't at liberty. They apparently would have the results within 24 hours, but I couldn't get an appointment in at the clinic in those 24 hours. And they can't give you results over the phone. They won't give you results over the phone. So the soonest I could get in was the Friday of that week. And it was this thing where, like, it started off pretty okay. And, I had a friend who was an emergency worker, and she was like, I'm pretty certain you'll be okay. And I had another mate who is an AMBO and everything else, and he's like, I think you'll be fine. And it's that think, right? Like, I was pretty certain, I'm fairly confident in things.
For those people who don't know, AMBO is ambulance worker.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Australianisms. So, and the reason that there was a vague scare, like, I wasn't concerned at first. The situation at work got violent because we caught this woman stealing. And she tried to get past us, and she went in to grab me because I was blocking her from getting out of the shop. I said, no, we can't let you leave the shop until we check your bags. And she lunged at me, and it resulted in this scuffle. And in the course of the scuffle, she bit me. I was wearing a denim jacket, so, like, it's pretty tough to bite through, especially when you've only got like 3 teeth of your mouth.
I know which denim jacket too. Yep.
Yeah. So,
is there a hole in that now?
No. And this was where it became a bit fuzzy. So there was no hole in the jacket, and I was fairly certain I was fine. But when the cops got in there and they asked me to take my jacket off so they could see if there was any damage, when I took it off, I don't know, like when people graze, like when they trip over, when they're wearing jeans or something, or just pants or anything like that, when they trip over and graze their knee, the friction of the fabric still tears the skin and can sometimes obviously lead to bleeding depending on what the pressure's like. So because she essentially bit and then clamped down, like she was biting hard, the pressure of that made blood vessels pop under the skin, and obviously the friction tore the upper layers of skin. So when I saw that, I suddenly went, "Oh shit!" because it looked like she might have broken skin. So that was the concern. That whole week progressively got worse and worse, and then yeah, like I had like my first panic attack, I think, like on the Thursday night before the tests were meant to come in. And you know, that really kind of, that coming all back full circle, that whole experience really sort of changed a lot of how I look at things. And I just can't get angry at a lot of the things that I used to get really riled up about, because in the grander scheme of things, they're pretty inconsequential. And you know, people's stories are their own. I don't judge people as much as I used to. I don't get angry about things. I don't hold grudges really anymore, because there's no point. And you know, there's a ton of other things, but they're the key kind of things here. But when this happened, like even with that kind of positive thinking in mind, it's kind of like I can't get my head around it any other way. Like it's seeing it there, because I actually saw it through your Instagram.
Yeah. And I feel terrible about it because I didn't spot
No,
it.
that's not on you. That's not on you. Like what, you know, I was leaving work and I saw it as I was getting on the bike. And even just that one kind of scroll through, the hand in the back that's like this, just straight away, I was like, that's my hand. And then I did the zoom in thing and it was like, the other hand's mine as well. And then it was like, you know, bolted home on the bike. And, you know, obviously, I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But when I got home and could look at it in high res, it was like, I can't shake it. And I showed it to friends who were illustrators and they were shocked. I then took it, like a good friend of mine, Douglas Holgate, he illustrates, you know, young adult and kids books, and he's responsible for he's one of the co-creators of Last Kids on Earth, which is a Netflix thing. He and I have been friends forever. We talk about all this stuff all the time, and I showed it to him, and he and I were both sitting there in front of Photoshop at the same time, you know, looking at the bits going, that the arm is this, and, you know, you would move it, and Photoshop has a snap function for when you're trying to accurately layer things, like if you want to multiply layers and make sure that you've got things. And I think it's specifically for, like, you know, light boxing and tracing, but also shapes, making sure shapes match up perfectly. And it was snapping pieces of my drawing onto his cover. And, you know, you just kind of move it a little bit and then it's like that straight in. And it really started becoming a case of there's no way. Like the tail, even the body, like I was looking at the little bits in the body and I'm kind of like, it matches up.
Yeah, I was looking at the back pipes. That was the part that like occurred to me, because like I was looking at it on the mobile at first because that's when I did the post. But then when like I saw everything blow up and I was like, hold on a sec, and I went to my computer, I was like, oh shit, that's the back of your alien.
Yeah. And see, like, you know,
And
there are little
I'm
tweaks.
familiar with that piece because I've seen your work a lot.
I've seen that one pop up a couple of times on social media, but not like, it's not hard to find. Sorry, it's not easy to find Googling. Like I said this, you know, when we were talking just before we went live, like it's not an easy piece to find just randomly Googling. It doesn't come up straight away if you type xenomorph art or alien art. So, you know, this is the other thing. Like what I was saying was, it's tweaked certainly. You know, arms have been moved, and it's kind of been Frankensteined. Again, I need to preface this with, I believe all of this. This is what I believe. I believe that it has been Frankensteined in a way to create a new image, which legally falls under like an odd sort of transformative appropriation, which is a whole other thing. But it's still lazy, if this is what it is. And you know, the pipes have been sort of moved around. The lower left-hand pipe is a completely different one. I don't know where that's come from. It may be he's drawn it in. The thing that I noticed too, like, and this is really odd because I've drawn these things time and time again. Like I just tweeted a piece that literally has about 20-something aliens on it, all coming at the reader. And I know the bodies of these things pretty intimately. The guys who, you know, from Creative Assembly, you know, I've seen their model. Like I really love the tweaks that they made to the alien, and I've got the figure, so I can sort of have that there, and I can look at that and spin that round, and I know it intimately. There's a point on the leg at the front, so the alien's right leg, where the line work doesn't match up, and there's an odd like ribbing halfway down the leg towards the knee. And if you look at the line work, it kind of stops and then suddenly becomes this other ribbing section, this kind of ribbed pipe section. And that's not on the creature. I know what their legs look like. It's like a bit has been taken and either put over the top of where the leg ends to extend it out. And it just doesn't match up. And if you zoom in on their head, which I'm fairly certain is the combination of a sketch by Andy Blaze that's been appropriated as well. And it's had a different back section added to it, or, you know, drawn to it. And if you zoom in on it, halfway through, you can see where the line work doesn't match up. The inking, the strokes cut. So it's like something's been put over the top of something else. And looking at it at a distance, it looks fine. But if you focus on the middle part, it's like, it's right there. And even that's not, I know how the heads work. That is not part of that structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is too, it's like you've got an Alien versus Predator style face, or Alien Resurrection style face. Possibly even Alien 3, because the Alien, that was where, is it K&B? Is that, am I remembering that right? Who's the production company that did, you know, the God, I can't believe I'm forgetting their names. You know, the guys that were responsible for the Predator suits.
Addy.
Yeah, ADI. So ADI. So, you know, they have a very distinct look to their aliens, and it's very different to the Stan Winston one, which is very different to the Giga one. And I try to be, as, you know, as far as I'm concerned, Giga is where the buck stops. You know, the creature hasn't looked better since then. And I think Killian Plunkett is second after that. I think what he did with Giga's design is perfect. And I know, actually, I was told this by a friend at Dark Horse, that the only comic artist, or the only artist outside of himself that worked on the Aliens things that Giga reached out to directly was Killian Plunkett, saying how much he liked his version of the alien that he was drawing in the comics. Apparently Giga sent them a fax to Dark Horse saying as much. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, like Killian Plunkett, I mean, people could see it in my work. But yeah, like that's the thing. I can see when someone is Frankensteined, different aliens
Yeah.
together.
So let's break it down. Like, so these are points that I've read around forums, around Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah.
Essentially everything is based off Giga. So why get upset when you're working within someone else's universe and someone else's IP? Could you
Because
explain that?
yeah, so like there's a big difference. Like I think anyone who works on Alien knows that Giga is all of this comes from Giga, but none of us are sitting there directly tracing Giga pieces and handing them in as our own.
Mm,
Like we are not profiteering directly from pieces of art. We're not making facsimiles of that art and then
mm,
getting a check for it.
mm,
All of us so far, to the best of my knowledge, have looked at the designs, found our way of drawing them, and then drawn our own original compositions using that art as reference.
mm,
And this is the distinction. Giga's material is the reference material. That is what we all go back to and go, that is how that is meant to look.
mm,
So go and draw it. Draw it tearing a man in half. Draw it running down a corridor. Draw it doing whatever. Crouched in a toilet. Draw it eating a pineapple. Anything, right?
Yeah.
You can't go. There is a limited amount of work that Giga has done that is public where you could construct an image by tracing that work. If everyone traced Giga's work, or if everyone went and drew if everyone did what essentially I believe Greg Land has done with my work
Mm,
to Giga's work,
mm,
there would be 30 years of Aliens comics with identical artwork. Just
mm,
boring, same old artwork. But that's not how it works. So I get that sentiment, but we are not wholesale ganking Giga's work to make a dollar or to construct a visual. Like we are interpreting that information and then channeling it through our own, mental receptors to construct an image of our own design and
mm,
then function that out. Um,
mm,
that's the difference. That's the key difference. What's happened here is someone has essentially cut a piece of work I and a few other people have done, jigsawed it together
mm,
to kind of create something different, and then just kind of gone out there and passed that off as their own and collected a check for it.
mm.
Um, so that's a big difference. It's a huge difference. And honestly, if people, because I've had this conversation on Twitter, and most people who bring this up can't understand this, and they never will.
Mm.
So I can't be any clearer with what's gone on there and what the difference is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
the best I can be with it.
yeah. Um, and I'm right with you there. I do not believe that like, okay, so we've been given the alien in Alien 1979, and then, the comics, and then the books, and then the preceding movies. Everyone who's touched Alien or had the chance to work in that sandbox has kind of developed their own style, whether it be
Yeah,
directors, writers, creature designers, practical effects
completely.
artists, concepts artists, everyone. You
Yep,
can't say that concept art from Alien 1979 is exactly the same as the one in Aliens, which James Cameron created,
exactly.
or the stuff that was created for Alien 3, which there's so many different versions, and everyone
Yep,
loves their own version of Alien 3 as well, because now we've got the William Gibson version that's been released by Dark Horse. And then we've got the much maligned Alien Resurrection, and then going to Prometheus and going to Covenant.
mhm,
We have so many different variations of the beast. Like, I've got my little guys here. none of them look the same, and
No.
there's a reason why.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like Alien Isolation, right? Which is
Yeah.
it's direct. It's the most direct sequel to the original Alien you can get, and even then they took creative liberties with the design of the creature, and I like some of them. I don't, there was some things that I sort of tweaked as well. Like I took what I liked from that design, particularly like the leg. I can't remember what you call that. There is a name.
Digigrade legs.
That's it. Digigrade legs. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
I
I always call
always
it like the
always
horse leg,
I always
like
think
horse ankles.
tardigrade, but it's the wrong thing.
It's digigrade. Yes, that's it.
Digigrade,
I keep
yeah.
looking it up and then I forget it and I feel stupid. But
I have
yeah,
so
so
many people remind me.
good. You need those people in your life.
Yeah.
So I love the digigrade legs.
Mm,
I love the height. I know it's a contentious thing, but I love the mouth.
yeah.
I think that kind of it's a slightly more animalistic design, but I think like I've started kind of looking at things and I got a ton of commissions to do, and it's been a long time since I drew the big chap,
Mm.
and I've kind of been looking because there was one person, and they're going to kill me because I can't remember their name, but it's a handle. It's a handle on one of the forums, and they always kind of lament the use of the kind of very square jaw of the xenomorph in Isolation.
Mm.
Um, and like I the more I watch, the more I agree. I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm starting to like that kind of.
Like the thinner jaw.
Yeah, it's a more elegant draw. They're right. It's a thinner draw. But the other thing that I think um, the Isolation Alien doesn't have is there's a point where the head expands and then
Mhm.
contracts again,
Mm.
and I love that. And even like what and going to Stan Winston, right, where they just took the dome off.
Mm.
Something I really love about the shape of the alien's alien head, where it's got that kind of like you've got the kind of front of it,
Mm.
and then it kind of goes up, and then it divvies up again, like just really slightly.
Mm.
And I really love that little bit there. So I try to kind of incorporate these sorts of things. And again, like I kind of like I really, really like I idolize Killian Plunkett's work.
Mm.
And so I draw my arms slightly longer and I draw my fingers slightly longer and I give it kind of like a hunch. It's never like rarely are my aliens kind of standing upright or walking around like people. Like
Mm.
they're kind of more like kind of, I don't know, goblins.
Yeah.
Um, so everyone finds their way of taking the things that they really like about the various different designs and applying them to themselves.
Mm.
And of course none of us would be here without Giga. Like that much is it's straight up. I think the original big chap design is perfect.
Mm.
um but you can still do things to sort of play around, and when you play around with those things creatively, you find a thing that you kind of go, oh no, I like that,
Mm.
and it becomes something else. And you, like you said, you go through any iteration of aliens, whether it's comics, books, toys, anything, there's not one that's the same, not one. And the two that I love the most in the comics are completely different, like stylistically. Like I love, like as far as I'm concerned, Labyrinth and Salvation are two of, like they're the pinnacle of aliens comics in my mind. Like they just don't get better than
Mm.
that. And that's just me. But I think Mike Mignola's art in that is incredible, and the way he draws his aliens is incredible, and the way he lights them is incredible. And I love the way Killian Plunkett does them as well. And I've applied what I've learned and what I like from both of them to make my own ones,
Mm.
or to have my own take on them. Yeah,
I just want to
Y-
bring up a point. Like
yeah,
having had this conversation with you, and you speaking really passionately about the alien, and knowing it intimately, I think that's the main difference between a sham artist like Land, where he traces other people's work and he takes other people's constructions,
mm,
because he has no idea what he's doing. And that's the point, right? And us as fans, I think it's, as much as it is terrible that your work's been pillaged, and he's like basically been paid to copy your work when you
mhm,
need the money. um we as
That's
fans,
that's an interesting thing there. Like we'll get into that later. But
yeah,
you
but we as fans are upset too
yeah.
because you know we
Yeah,
enjoy
I
your
know what the
work.
fans are like too. I know what the fans are like. Like I've seen them deconstruct things, and I tell you what, Aliens fans, they know what their stuff is. But I will say this: Predator fans are some of the most hardcore, passionate people I've ever, had the pleasure to kind of present things for.
Yeah.
Doing the NECA boxes is like, yeah, I had some comments when I used to write the Ninja Turtles that were kind of like, wow, that's like a deep grab, and I could find a way to explain it.
Yeah.
But that's how passionate these guys are about these things and about continuity and about detail.
And if the fans are this passionate and we're going to break down and look at every single thing, because like that's my thing, that's most of the YouTubers that do alien stuff. We look at the inspiration, we see where all of these homages come from, where
Yeah,
these inspirations come from. We talk directly to you, the creators, and
yeah.
want to find
Sorry, I'm
out,
just putting my phone in charge.
that's okay. We're just trying to find out, that little bit more about like why you did certain things and, you know, find out more about your process.
Yeah,
I think there's more of a appreciation for artists these days now more than ever because, like, I've seen your conversations on Twitter before. Sometimes colorists completely get forgotten, but like they're just
absolutely.
important as the letterers, as everyone else who kind of pull their talents together to create something like that.
Yeah,
Um, we don't want anyone to be forgotten these days, and there shouldn't be an excuse these days because we've got a way to keep tabs of everything. So, so what does allowing what Greg Landfill has done to your work in general for the whole comics industry, if we allow this to happen, what does that say to, say, uh, Dan Bavot and other people who, like really big names in the industry, have come up and said, what he's done is not right, and we stand behind you. If
yeah.
we
Look,
start, if we open up that floodgate and let people just copy willy-nilly, and people can start getting cut checks because they'll do it cheaper, they'll do it shittier, they'll do it quicker, just so the company can go, yeah, we'll just knock it out because these fans will just buy anything. It doesn't really matter. What sort of floodgates
it's
are we opening when that happens?
yeah, it's that thing of like, there was that whole thing, and there are great documentaries about it, where it's like sampling in music. When sampling in music became a big deal, and it's like if someone were to justify this kind of thing as their own, it's like when Vanilla Ice tried to explain that Ice Ice Baby is not under pressure. And it's like, dude, you are running against Queen and David Bowie, and you're not fooling anyone. It's it. The problem with it is obviously is it kills creativity.
Hmm.
If people are just gonna, and look, if everyone just starts doing this, they're gonna run out of things to draw. Like there are well documented. There are websites completely devoted to the times Greg's reused his own art.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like, how do you put up with that? It annoys me when I see repeated panels in comics. Like even when I was doing Defiance, if we had repeated panels, I would generally try to redraw most of that panel if it needed to be, if it needed to be different. I might not redo like a star field, but oftentimes even repeat panels, like they could have just been, I could have just left the head, it's like a talking head, so like it's a panel where someone's like that, right?
Yeah.
And the script would call for like same angle, just a continued conversation. So it would go, there were points in the script where it would go Zula Davis, and it would be this conversation, and that was all the panel description was. So I could have left it as it was. and just had repeated panels. And that has a place. Like, I've seen guys do really great things with that. Bendis does a lot of great things with that. But it does become noticeable sometimes. And I try to, where they might have been talking like this in the previous panel, in the next panel, I'll kind of have them like this, or in the panel after that, I'll be like that. And it's just kind of like, it just mixes things up a bit, and it makes things more visually interesting, and it adds to the character. One of the things, like, I do really like low-key visuals. I really like low-key characters. And, you can add a lot to a character through just kind of low-key body movements and tweaks and small things in those repeats. So, when things are the same and when things are constantly the same image, it just becomes boring, and it's going to turn people away. And this is one of the things I've been hearing, like, in response to when I put a tweet out. For people who don't know, I'm sure most people do, but I didn't put a tweet out there accusing Greg of this. I was pretty certain, but it was just, I couldn't believe what was happening, to be honest. Like, I was looking for, I think, some kind of, no, it's not that, like, some kind of acknowledgement, I think.
Yeah.
And it was more me pointing these things out and going, am I not wrong? And I said that at the end of the tweet. I'm like, am I crazy? ? And the unanimous thing was no. The unanimous response was, no, you are not. This is full on. And the problem was, this was the middle of the night when I saw this. Not the middle of the night, but it was the end of the day when I saw this. And after Doug and I had broken it down, it was well and truly the middle of the night. I got on the phone with another artist friend of mine, and she was amazing. She gave me a good bit of guidance. And, it just got to a point where, I was so angry about, the more I saw confirmation coming in, the angrier I got. And I reached a point where I was literally shaking. Like, I hadn't been that angry ever. I can't recall being that angry.
Yeah. For the people who don't know, like, I've seen Tristan in person. He's a really laid back guy, really chill, really nice to talk to. I hung out with him. We shot Aliens together at the arcade.
Yeah.
He's approachable. He's not like the sort of person who, like, bursts into a room and is like, "Don't you know who I am?" He's not that guy.
Well, it's. I try to keep myself in check, because otherwise, if you don't, and someone calls you on it, then, it's not a great look.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of those things where, just kind of seeing that and having all that, and if that's the precedent set, where you see all this kind of stuff happening, a few of us have kind of joked, and I'm sure this is a joke that's come up before, because the amount of apathy out there regarding Greg Land's work and what's happened is just incredible. Like, I've got a tremendous amount of support from people just saying, this is incredible, I can't believe this has happened to you, and it's wonderful, I love it. But, like, there is more apathy out there than anything else, because people just expect it from Greg. I wrote to a friend who used to write for Marvel. He's a big kind of writer at a bunch of these things, and I neglected to mention that it was Greg Land that had done this when I sent him a message. I said, hey, look, am I crazy, or is this not what this is? And he sort of suggested, that's pretty full on, maybe send that off to a website called Bleeding Cool, who does a thing like this every now and then. They'll run stories on, it's called swiping in comics. And then he shot me a message and he said, if you had said it was Greg straight out the gate, like, I didn't realize who the artist was. Like, I couldn't see the signature on the art. If you had said it was Greg right out the gate, like, I wouldn't have even questioned it. And, this is a top tier writer. I'm not going to name him, but this is a top tier writer. And he said, of course it's Greg. Of course. And he said, I'm really, really sorry this has happened. And you know, that's the thing. Everyone's been really, really lovely. Everyone's been like, I'm really, really sorry this has happened to you. I'm like, I appreciate the sentiment. I really, really do. But you don't have to be like, it's not your place to be sorry about this. You have nothing to apologize for. And that's, you know, that's been a great part of it too. Everyone's been so supportive of it. But then, as I said, on the flip side, there's all this apathy. And the more apathy that's out there, then the more it kind of just enables this kind of thing. And the jokes were from a lot of the supportive people were kind of like, well, you know, at least you know that if you ever want to work for a big company, you know, you can just trace someone else's work and it's fine. And you know, that's a joke, but clearly it's also the truth.
Yeah. And
At least I believe it's the truth.
it's sad because like I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, that there are like legitimate forms of art, which is collage and tracing.
Yeah.
Like a good example of tracing and self art is Henry Darger, if you know about like his
Yeah.
artwork.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, exactly. So there are people out there who have like taken tracing, but then still created art, created a story, and in a lot of cases, nothing for publication, but it's like, you know, a form of like creative release, right? But for you, this is not that. This is your job. You're not
Yeah.
exhibiting in a gallery. You're not making a statement. You're not telling a story within a universe where you don't have any possibility of getting paid work. We're talking about a person who has worked on a number of different properties, a number of different comics, having their work plagiarized, passed off as someone else's, and the money goes directly from him. Like,
Yeah.
like you don't get anything, and you said like you're probably not going to get any money for this.
Look, I don't want money from this. Like, this is I don't want. This is a thing.
Because
There's been a
everyone keeps
ton
on
of people.
saying like, sue the guy, you know,
Yeah.
get money.
Sue the guy. He owes you money. And like, I have made the joke. Yeah. Like, you know, when I first came up, and you know, I'm not incapable of seeing humor in things, right? You've got to make light of things, otherwise, it's, you know, life is just awful. But you know, I did joke that I'm pretty sure this guy owes me money, or at least an apology, and you know, it's a joke, because you know, I'm not expecting that, but it's just a shame seeing that. And the thing is, yeah, it's like I'm not doing this because I want money. And you know, tons of people have been like, put him on the Alien book, put him on, you know, why are you not just hiring this guy? Because, and I appreciate there's been so many artists that I look up to basically outright saying that like I'm, you know, the current go-to guy for this. Why you wouldn't just go to me in the first place? And you know, I'm not so far up my ass that I'm like, yeah, why didn't Marvel know who the fuck I was? You know, that kind of thing. Because Marvel's a huge machine. There are a lot of parts to Marvel. And it's a huge industry. They work with people all over the world. There are tons of people who make it their goal in life to work for Marvel. You know, my art style it's never really kind of lent itself to their characters. I mean, there are some certainly that I think I could probably do a pretty good job with, but I don't think you'd ever see me doing, you know, Avengers.
But I'd like to see you try. That'd be cool.
Well, no, I mean, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say no, because you know, I've drawn the Hulk, I've drawn those characters, and they're great to draw. Like I'd never drawn the Incredible Hulk until you know, about a week and a half ago, and when I was drawing, like, this is so much fun. Like, I see why people like drawing and working on this character. And you know, I grew up reading Spider-Man. I spent 25 years of my life reading Spider-Man. Like, that book informed a lot of my, you know, outlook on being a person. You know, great power comes great responsibility, all that sort of stuff. You know, the messages these characters were designed to instill in people, you know, it did exactly what it was meant to do on me. And you know, it's one of those things that all of this is an intrinsic part in my development as a person and as an illustrator,
Mm.
and even as a writer. So it's not that like I'd ever sort of say no, but like I never really kind of had my head sort of geared towards Marvel because I never just, you know, my whole career was geared towards getting onto Aliens books
Mm.
because that was the first comic I ever had on a pull list. Aliens, I think the first one I had on a pull list was Labyrinth. And I remember going into this tiny little comic shop in Box Hill, which is a town here in Melbourne, tiny little comic shop, and getting like Rogue, Predator, you know, all these random issues of what was out at the time. And then saying, because I think Labyrinth 1 was out at the time, I said, I want all, like, just put all of these. I want to have a subscription to these. And I would have, God, I would have been like 6, maybe. So, you know, I'm a 6-year-old reading Aliens comics. And I'd already seen the film at that point. Because I was just so enamored with the Giga design. You know, I was this kid that saw the, you know, because Alien was generally in the science fiction section, not the horror section. And I remember, like, as a kid, the kids section, all the animated films were next to the science fiction films because Star Wars and E.T. and Back to the Future, they were all in the science fiction section. But they were all at kid height. And of course, when you're a kid and you're kind of just looking around and you see this box with like a green glowing egg on it that just says Alien, you know, I know what that word is. Like, give me that. And, you know, you turn the box over and the box is pretty innocuous. Like, I think the only contentious image on the back of the box, the VHS at the time, I think there was a shot of the chest burster. I think. I could be wrong. It could have been a later one that I'm remembering. But the images were largely just them in the ship. But there was one image of the alien crouched over, like sort of hunched over. It's a really well-known promo still. I remember seeing that thing and just going, what is that? I need to see what this is. This is amazing. And, you know, I'm a kid that loved dinosaurs and Godzilla, so I love monsters. And I see this, and this is like the perfect monster. So, you know, it's just, this is in there. And I geared my entire comics career towards, when I found out that you could get paid to draw these things, it was kind of like, it's like Nicola Scott, when she talks about Wonder Woman, you know, when she figured out, you know, you could get paid to draw Wonder Woman every day. That's what she geared her life towards.
Yeah, because
I'm
she
not saying I
started out as
necessarily
a graphics designer, and she was like, "What? I can draw comics and get paid for this?"
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, it's one of those things. Like when comics became a possibility, it was something that I actively started sort of not chasing, but slowly kind of gearing myself towards, so that hopefully I would be asked to do it. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened.
How
And
did you
sort
end
of
up at Dark Horse? Like, how did you end up doing?
that was funny. So Josh Izzo, who was the head of the brand at Fox a few years back, and he was the one, I think he invented the Alien Day thing that we now have every year.
Yeah, that's correct.
That was his thing. So I had done years ago, back when I started drawing again. This was after I'd sort of done my dash on, you know, Ghostbusters and the Ninja Turtles, and, you know, it's kind of, I was actually back at university at the time, looking at teaching, and I drew a poster for the film, which was Kane looking in the egg, opening up, and then in the reflection of the helmet, you could see the kind of top of the egg and the face huggers. You know how it does that thing when the egg opens up in the first film? They never do it in the other films, but there's that kind of offal that sort of slides back and then it launches out. So it was kind of that offal, but the fingers were kind of coming over the top, and you could see that in the reflection of the thing. So it was that shot. And I did a couple of prints of that at a show unofficially. I shouldn't have been selling them. And he caught wind of that. He saw it, and he's like, he sent me. I got an email out of the blue from from him, very official, Fox licensing. And it was like, do you have the license to sell those? And I went,
Well, this is you're a fan artist, right? Like,
at the time, I mean, I was a professional, like I was working on Ghostbusters and things like that at the time. But yeah, I was just a fan artist, and I was doing conventions and things. And there's always been this kind of unsung, there's kind of a blind eye that gets turned to people who do prints of
yeah,
the things that they work on at conventions. And
yeah,
sometimes the companies decide to clamp down to prove a point, or just to scare people a little bit, and remind them that these are their things. So I got a bit of a slap on the wrist, but he didn't, drag me for it. What he said was, this piece is amazing. And I'm going to keep you on file for something down the line. And that began a really great relationship, really, really great relationship. And then I got, I did MADMAX. And it was funny because I was at Nicholas Scott's place at the time, because I got invited up to do the premiere for the film in Sydney. And, invited Nicola because we had a +1, and she'd been really great support, always has been. And the day after, I was talking to Nicola after it was all done, because MADMAX was really fast-paced. Like, doing the comics on that was really fast-paced, and no one really expected the film to be as huge as it was. So, as per sort of normal with licensed comics, they weren't really sort of concerned too much about them, and they kind of wanted to get them out quickly and have them out for the film. So there wasn't a huge concern about quality on the corporate end, but obviously they still wanted a good book out. And so it was a really, fast paced. And my computer died. I worked digitally, and my computer died halfway through it, so I had to scramble to buy a new computer and everything else. So it was very fast paced, a lot of late nights. And then at the end of it, it was all done. We'd seen the film. I came out, and I was packing up to go, and Nicola was sort of asking, where do you go from here? Like, what do you want to do now? I said, look, I'm pretty certain I feel like for now, like, I'm done with licensed comics for a bit. The only thing I would do now would be like an Alien or a Predator book. And if it weren't a really good writer involved, I would want to write it as well as draw it. And literally that day, like, I texted Nicola as I was getting on the plane, saying that I just got a message from Brian Wood saying, hey dude, how would you feel about working on an Aliens comic with me? So it was it was very sort of serendipitous, and that led to Defiance. It was Defiance came a long way. There was a lot of development leading up to that point. I'd sort of come in, think about, a couple of months into development already. And yeah, it was full on. Like, Prometheus had happened, but none of that lore had really affected the Defiance pitch, and we completely overhauled that. I remember writing like a Bible sort of document, basically deconstructing what Prometheus had suddenly brought to the alien lore, and how that could be interpreted or reinterpreted. And one of the things actually came up in Cold Forge, wherein the alien doesn't necessarily lay an egg, but it, basically bursts the black slime into their bodies, and that's what creates, it kind of pulls DNA and creates the embryo. It was this huge document, all kinds of stuff. And I remember Josh sending me an email going, you are a monster. Like, the amount of stuff that's in here that none of them had thought of was just like, this is crazy. But we couldn't fit it into Defiance. Just the narrative for Defiance didn't allow for a lot of it. And, that was fine. I was kind of like, look, I would love to do a thing on my own, using a lot of this. And we were gearing towards that as well. but then, after Defiance, Josh moved on, and things changed. And obviously, I sort of moved on to other projects and other things in life, and then it all sort of came back around.
Mm.
So that was kind of how I got involved in things. It was very kind of serendipitous and in both angles. And it was Josh that suggested me to Spencer and Brian that I do these books. But it's also kind of funny because Spencer and I had been looking for projects I'd known Spencer since he was in marketing at Dark Horse years ago. And the first thing that I had with Dark Horse, the first point of interaction I had with Dark Horse was me saying randomly on Twitter, I would love to do a Terminator book that is like The Road, the Cormac McCarthy book. And the Dark Horse Twitter account said that would be amazing. And that was how I got to know Spencer. And it's funny, actually, that kind of came back around recently. Spencer and I were kind of talking about doing something else. And I said, I know Terminator's not really a thing sort of right now, and no one's really doing anything, but how about we revisit that idea? And he was all for it, and I was pretty all for it. But as things kind of went along, hit a few kind of, I kind of just hit a few roadblocks, and I was kind of like, look, it's not quite working the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Maybe we can sort of put it on hold and maybe come back to it some other time. But yeah, so it's really crazy. All these relationships that I already sort of had in the past all sort of culminated with Defiance. So yeah, it was a long kind of thing. But that's kind of how all these things are with comics. Like all of my entry points into working on a certain book has all come from that sort of thing. It's been rare that someone has seen my art and then gone, we'd like to put you on this book.
Yeah.
It's all usually been because I've sort of had a relationship with someone in the past and they've had something in their brain and go, we'll get Tristan. So yeah, it's a fickle thing, comics. Everyone's got a different way in. You'd be hard pressed to convince me that many people get into comics these days, the comics industry these days, without knowing someone.
Yeah.
It's that classic thing of not what you know, but who you know, because there are so many talented artists. And I'm really, really fortunate. I've come a long way with my art since I started. Like, I'm really, really happy with how I draw nowadays and how my image composition is and my visual storytelling and everything else. But there are so many talented artists that are just missing out. And this is the thing that bothers me with the cover too. Like and going back to what I was saying, I'm not in this for a buck. I don't want money out of Marvel. I don't want reparations or anything. I would just really, at this point, even at the start, just acknowledgement. Not of my work, but of what's happened. So, and the thing is, if what I believe to be the case is the case, there are, I probably couldn't count how many artists there are that could adequately draw an alien to that standard, if not better, in a very short space of time. Because the thing that I kept hearing with all of this and being told was a big part of the reason people like this keep getting work is because they're fast and they're nice people in person. And it's kind of like, well, surely there are fast and nice people who won't gank bits and pieces from everyone else and hand in what's essentially a collage that's been colored by a very good colorist. And that's a big part of it as well. Like it's not about me; it's about the work. And that's really what I keep trying to push when sort of people, as much as I appreciate the support, like I love the support, don't get me wrong at all. Like I'm not downplaying that because it's just amazing and it's genuinely overwhelming. And I'm really, really grateful that people think of my work that way, and of me that way. But I think of obviously I think of myself that way, but I also think of plenty of other artists that way as well. I just did a book with 40 other artists, many of whom, yeah, exactly. And like I'm about to give my one away. Like I've got to collate all these names tonight because
Yeah.
I'm giving a copy away. There are so many artists in there that are worth that work as well.
Exactly.
So
And
it's not
good
about me; it's about the work.
good art takes time.
That's yeah,
And that's another thing. Like, I think we've kind of hit that sort of like instant puffy culture where people want things immediately and they want it cheaply. And
yeah,
in a lot of ways, they're making that compromise. A good example is the Sonic movie. Um,
yeah,
and like, or even The Life of Pi, where artists work their heart out and they put in the hours, they don't get paid enough, and then the business goes bust.
yeah,
Uh, that's predominantly why I did my creative series with um, Covenant, because I looked at the art book and I'm like, who's this piece by? There's no credit there. Who's this piece by?
yeah.
There's no credit there. And I had to
See
chase up
this.
all the artists individually.
Yeah, when I worked on MADMAX, like one of the things that I said, because I'm good friends with Mark Sexton. He was one of the storyboarders on MADMAX, and he was largely the reason that art book is as good as it is. Because the other problem is a lot of the art of books that come out are, they're tie-ins, they're marketing pieces. So then they're not as definitive as they probably should be. It's like when Prometheus came out. There's so much art that is not in the art of book that is
Mm,
online.
mm,
And I love these kinds of books. And there are definitely companies that put out amazing art books, amazing art books.
mm.
But there's so much art that they just want to get the book out quickly, and that speaks to what you're saying in that, yeah, like everything is so corporately driven now that creativity is secondary, or artistry is secondary if it's lucky.
Do you think a union or something could save the industry from having all of these issues?
Yes, I think a union is long overdue in comics, but the problem is exactly what we were just saying, and exactly what the problem is with this cover. I don't believe that a union nowadays, if there was a union, like the Screenwriters Guild, or any of those kind of actors guilds or unions or anything like that, if we had have had one of those in the comics industry decades ago, I don't think a lot of this stuff would be happening now. And I think comics would be a completely different playing field. But if a union existed now, I feel like what would happen is you would get companies going for low hanging fruit and snapping up non union workers to circumvent,
Yeah.
union policies, to
Mm.
circumvent having to pay certain amounts. And pay has been one of the most hotly quietened subjects in comics for the longest time. It's very rare that you'll see people talking about pay rates. And I get it. People don't like talking about finances, and that's completely fair. Like, finances are nobody's business
Mm.
unless they want to make it their business. But I think if there was a little more kind of openness about pay rates from company to company and from person to person, and why those pay rates are what they are,
Mm.
there would be kind of, I think, fewer problems regarding those sorts of things. There would still be problems, obviously, but the thing a lot of people don't realize is that every book has a different budget and every book has a different priority.
Mm.
I completely understand that Aliens is a lower priority than Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of the highest selling merchandise, flagships in existence.
Mm.
It's like Batman, of course, Green Lantern is more likely to get cancelled than a Batman book.
Mm.
There's a hierarchy, and each of those books in the hierarchy will have a different budget and everything else. And, you know, I completely get that, but there's not a lot of openness. And, you know, the reason we don't have a trade union, the reason we don't have a union is because of all these sorts of things. But it would be interesting. Like, I doubt what's happened, what I believe has happened with me would happen. But it's a double-edged sword. You know, it's a really, really hard thing to you know, find. And now that, you know, Disney owns Marvel, and, you know, Warner Brothers owns sorry, what did I say? I said Disney. Yeah, Disney owns Marvel. DC is owned by Warner Brothers, Time Warner. You know, these are big, big companies, and, you know, the parent companies, the umbrella companies, are all about the bottom line. You know, and that's the world. That's the world. The world is about money. And, you know, that's the other thing that's really shitty about this situation, is that I get that, you know, Greg needs to earn money, and needs money. You know, he's got a family. But the key word there is earn. And I get that work has gone into that cover, but I believe that most of that work was done off my back and off the back of other people. And even thinking about, like, looking at when, you know, a lot of people broke it down and they were like, if this is what's happened, the sheer amount of collaging that's gone on to create the base image, he must be lightning quick in Photoshop if that's the case. Because it took a long time for me to assign all those pieces. So, you know, it's an unfortunate thing, but yeah, like, you know, it's just the way of the world. Money is the way of the world. And all these companies have a bottom line. Marvel needs to, you know, this is the reason books get cancelled. And, you know, Marvel don't want books cancelled. You know, I know those editors don't want books being cancelled. They're in there to, you know, they really want to make these books. These editors make these books because they want to make these books. Maybe you get some assigned a thing that they don't want to do. You know, every now and then someone's got to take a job that, or someone gets assigned a job that, you know, it's a bit shit. Or they think it's a bit shit. But, you know, I don't think you would. Something I said not long ago is, you don't go into comics without loving comics. Everyone who is working in comics has come from a background of wanting to work in comics. And comics is a really hard industry to work in. It's a really hard, it doesn't pay well, unless you're kind of doing your own thing and you've managed to market that properly. You know, people who have been really successful in comics, you know, Mark Millar is, you know, he can throw millions of people to draw their books, to draw his books. There are tons of people who are very successful in comics, but it's very hard, really, really hard. And no one stays in it unless they love it. They really love it. So I don't think anyone is in any of this. I'm sure Greg even loves comics. He'd have to. But it's the way things have been done. It's hard to put in.
How long did it take for you to draw those two pieces that he basically stole from?
A full day.
Full day.
Each of those drawings is a full day. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's big or small. The alien is not easy to draw. It's particularly the way I draw. Like, I'm a detail-driven person. So much so that anytime I do a cover, even like the boxes that I'm doing the Predator boxes for the current NECA, the new NECA line. And whenever I send a piece off to Simon Goff, who is my colorist, incredibly talented color guy, and has a real eye for everything. Even I have to go in and put guidelines on everything to say, this is what this is, because it's getting lost. Like, there's so many lines going on. And, you know, one box that I just handed in has a swarm of aliens in the back. It's not a big swarm, but it's a swarm. and I've had to basically go in and say, this one is this one is this one is this, and give them guides. So it's detail intensive, and because it's detail intensive, it takes a long time. And I try not to rely on a colorist to make work look good. I did that once in the past, and the colorist and I talked about it afterwards, and they apologized because they weren't on their A game at the time. There was a lot going on in their life, and it affected their work. And because I was kind of relying on the colorist a little bit in that book, it affected my work. So after that, I kind of really made a vow not to have work out there that relied on color. And that's another thing that came from working on the turtles as well, because the turtles were all in black and white. And so whenever I work, I only ever see it in black and white. So whenever colors come through, it's always amazing. And very rarely do I ever have notes on it, because colors are up to them. They know colors. I can give them reference and go, this is kind of what I'm thinking, but you go nuts. But yeah, both those aliens were, a day of drawing.
So one day.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the posing of the alien?
Look, they were commissions, and they weren't they weren't sort of expensive commissions. I do my commissions based on how much work's involved in it. So drawing an alien doing a certain thing is often harder than an alien just standing there. And that's really all they wanted. They just wanted a cool looking shot of an alien just standing there. And that's what I did. I just and you get a nice amount of detail. You get to see the form. Nothing's getting lost. And you see all the cool, interesting parts of the alien. It's not confusing at all. You know exactly what you're looking at that image. And even though the pose is kind of basic, it serves its purpose, and that's exactly what it was there for. If I had sorry, go on.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand why Greg couldn't just draw an alien then. It's one day of work. It's a standing alien.
Well, I was going to. This is essentially what I was going to say, right? If I was going to draw an alien in the pose that Greg's put it in, I wouldn't have drawn them the way I drew those two drawings. There's a whole other perspective I would have used, and by and large, those two drawings aren't technically compositionally interesting. They're very standard. If I was doing a cover for a thing, I would want to make sure that the composition is eye-catching, even if it's simple. And that may have been the art mandate, the art direction for Greg's thing. It might have been, look, we just want a cool shot of an alien, a few eggs. For sure. I would have probably done that a bit different. And look, someone pointed out too, that cover is very similar to the cover of Alien Pig. The one shot from years ago.
Yeah.
And it's probably not far off a bunch of other alien covers. The thing with all the covers I've done is I tried to make each one really, really different. And that gets hard. Trying to come up with new compositions is hard, particularly when you've drawn the alien a lot. And particularly when the editorial mandate is we just want, it needs to be this. But I can see what Greg maybe was going for, but I wouldn't have drawn it like that.
Yeah.
I don't think many other people would either. It's not a particularly interesting. And honest, if I'm going to get really technical, and I don't say this to kind of piss on it, but there are perspective things that are off anatomically, and that I believe is because of the collaged kind of nature of it. It's just odd. There's a lot of odd kind of perspectives going on and angles. So it's hard because it's a standard drawing, it's a standard pose, and people have pointed this out. People talk about how there's like plagiarism of poses. I'm like, yeah, but like you go through like Spider-Man and Superman and Batman, and there are like iconic poses, and there are only so many poses you can do for like Spider-Man when he's swinging through the air, or Superman when he's flying through the air, because there's only so many poses that allows for. And it's the same with, oh yeah, we want an alien standing there looking creepy in a hive. There's only so many ways you can do that. Of course, you're going to run into similarities. If it was an alien, like I said, earlier, I don't think we were recording them, but I'm like, if it's an alien eating pineapple in in the hive, sure, maybe I'd have it sort of in the wall and eating it this way, or maybe it's eating it with the inner mouth. There's a ton of ways you can be creative with that. But an alien standing there, it's not a particularly creative mandate, and it doesn't allow for a lot of wiggle room. But the alien itself speaks for itself, and that's it. It's an iconic creature. So you don't need to do much except draw the damn thing properly to make it look cool. And that's kind of it. So when I chose those poses, it was just like, well, they want it to look like this. So there you go.
Yeah.
No real flash, nothing really flash about it. Because it was going up in my cousin's room. I've got cousins who are 8 and 10, and it was going up in their room.
Yeah.
So it just needed to be the alien. They just love the alien. It just needs to be that.
Yeah.
So sure, there you go.
Which brings me to the point where like I started investigating, because of like fans being apathetic about the whole situation. We were looking at reasons that things have been plagiarized before, or things have been homaged before. What's the difference between a homage, between plagiarism? Why is it that Ridley Scott doing a trope? What's the difference between a trope as well, being repeated again and again, and how many different times can you do it? Like, where do we draw the line between that and Brad from Aliens Gateway Station, because we talk about comics a lot because we co-admin the group.
Yep.
I'll read it out directly from my Instagram, because I posted our conversation to there with his permission. I said, if there are other instances of plagiarism in Alien or in the past, or homages, and I said, obviously, in Alien Covenant, Dane and Matt were asked to do a copy of Geiger's work, or like do David's art style for Geiger. But Brad said, I wouldn't say that they copied Geiger's work, more like they replicated Geiger's style to create a new and original work. Other artists who've worked in the Alien franchise, working on comics or games, etc., are essentially replicating Geiger's aesthetics, which is what we've discussed. Um, and to some extent, whenever they draw the alien, big chap, or whatever it is, they're still making something original, even adding a bit of their own aesthetic or style to it. Dane and Matt took it a step further, staying a little true to Geiger's style. Geiger himself has even done this with the Isle of the Dead, which is the Arnold Bocklin piece. And then, Wayne Hagg, was asked to do the concept art for that, because then Ridley referenced that in the film for Shaw's Grave. You see a lot of similarities, but everyone still made something new without copying the previous version line for line, and that's being inspired rather than being a blatant rip-off or plagiarism. And many artists have recreated the Isle of the Dead piece in their own way, not just Geiger. What Land did was not the same as pulling inspiration or recreating an aesthetic by another artist. It was literally Tristan's work manipulated and combined with the work of others to make it appear like something new and original. And that's not okay. It's not his work. It was dishonest. It was unethical to do what he did. If Land had used Tristan's work as a reference, that would have been okay, because he would have done it in a style that wouldn't match up perfectly the way that they did in Photoshop with the snap function.
Yeah, exactly. See, it's interesting, like, because like I've homaged things in the past. Like, I'm actually surprised it took someone as long as it did to find the reference I made to the original, Nelson alien stuff, where the droids are getting torn in half in.
So just show everyone. Oh, I don't know whether I can show that. It's not working. I don't. Well, you talk. Explain it, and
You
I'll.
can link it up later.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there's a panel in Aliens Defiance where an alien is essentially bisecting a security guard, like tearing his torso from his legs. Like it's got him like by a leg and it's got him by an arm, and it's basically kind of torn him in half, and there's just guts flying everywhere. And it's one of my favorite things I've ever drawn. But it was absolutely a nod to Nelson drawing the the droids being torn in half, because it's one of those things, like you always see the aliens, skull busting people and like shanking people.
Here we go. I've got the share screen up so I can
Yeah, cool.
show people.
Um,
There we go. So
that's it.
So like even with your composition, we're seeing it from a different point of view. The aliens obviously, behind now. We're seeing it from the front, and you've put a lot more detail in the guts. The tail is more visible because we've got a bigger panel. Instead of the hive, we've got the ship, but you've still got similar lines. There's even a little homage here to the original Alien 1979, where the eye gouging of Brett. I
Yep.
mean, like, you've obviously made that idea yours, but still reference something directly.
That's it. That's it. And it's like, because this is something like I remember seeing that in the things, and it's the same with the Queen. Like that's clearly an homage to the alien Queen tearing Bishop in half. So it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, well, no one's ever really kind of shown how powerful these things are on their own, and I wanted to make sure that my aliens were absolutely fucking terrifying, like every sense.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that is a horrific act of violence. Like it's horrific.
I love it.
I do too. It was so much fun to draw. But like, you see it on the droids, and it's like, yeah, like we see that happen with Bishop, but a Queen does it, right? And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it like this because this is awful. Because I remember someone saying there's a quote where it's like, oh, they'll tear you apart like a wet paper bag.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. It was in one of the books. I'm certain of it. But yeah, that's what led to that. And I'm like, yeah, it's just this guy is a wet paper bag full of guts, and that's what I want to draw. That's homaging. It's like I saw. I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Joe Quinones, who's a Marvel artist. The same day this was happening, because I've seen an overlap on Twitter of the conversation. A while back, Joe did a Star Wars cover for the Star Wars comics at Marvel, which is a direct homage to Amazing Fantasy, whichever issue it was, 29, I think. Whatever Spider-Man first appeared. It's been that long since I've had to for that. It's the classic one where Spider-Man is swinging with the burglar under his, or the person under his arms. Which has been done 1,000 times. But he did this great one where it was Princess Leia swinging across the thing, carrying Luke across. It was kind of a reversal of that classic scene in the Death Star in the original film where they swing across the Death Star chasm. And people were like, oh, Marvel is, look at this, creatively bankrupt. And it's like, that's an homage. That's not tracing. That's not ganking. That is an homage, because all of the artwork that Joe has done is his own, very distinctly his own. It's just that the image composition is that. I've done Ghostbusters covers. I did a Ghostbusters cover that was the poster. This was before like the movie poster thing was a thing.
Yeah.
There's a ton of covers now that are just like direct kind of homages to movie posters. But I got asked to do a movie poster thing for one of the Ghostbusters comics back years ago. And I did Taxi Driver, but instead of Robert De Niro in the middle. And I did it in the style of the Taxi Driver poster. So sort of kind of oddly painted, and it's not immediately recognizably my work. Back then it was, because my style was very kind of rough then. But the poster was. the ghost taxi driver from the film, from the first film, when they have a montage of ghosts. So instead of Robert De Niro, it's this zombie taxi driver. That's an homage, because I've taken the composition, I've kind of replicated it, but it's still a different image. I haven't traced it because I've repainted the whole thing, and the taxi cab in the back is the go on from Ghostbusters, and the sign says something different, and even like the marquee down the bottom, instead of saying taxi driver, it says Ghostbusters, and all the credits are like the credits for the comic. So that's an homage. It's wildly different to what we're talking about tonight.
It's I think it's crazy because, like, I guess, like, coming from coming from an art background, being a jeweler, we suffer this in the industry a lot. People copying stuff because there's only
Bootlegging.
there's only a certain amount of ways you can create a ring. Everyone's done the Tiffany ring. Everyone knows the structure, the style, and
Not even I know that.
yeah, exactly. So no one's gonna go and make that and go, no, it's something else now, because in the industry it's rife. So, like, people have, like, okay, if you change it 15%, then it becomes yours. You can't say it was the previous designer anymore. As long as it's 15% changed, then you can say that, yep, that's the ring that I sell. So that's how people are getting around it and getting over it. And
It's a
this
gross
happened.
loophole.
Yeah, it's been happening ever since that people could make, like, molds, and then now with the event of 3D printing, it's made it even worse.
Of
So
course.
people are finding it harder to hold on to creations, so people have to constantly innovate and change, which kind of is a good thing because it keeps everything fresh, but it's also a lot of pressure having to, like, obey the certain fashion seasons, thinking 9 months ahead on design to have something at market in a year's time. It's
Yep.
hard, and no doubt it's the same for you as artists to come up with something fresh, something new.
Yeah, completely.
Especially when you've got, like, you have to be beholden to a certain aesthetic, or, like, like, say, Dane and Matt having to create stuff for Covenant. Their specific outline was, you have to draw Giga's work, but in the style of like Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah.
as in a rough style, classical. So, like, for example, I then showed them an image of the egg. So obviously, it's the egg, it's the alien egg. We can see it's the same thing, but at the same time, it's different.
Yeah.
He's done it in his own style, or in the style that Ridley Scott has asked. Now, if someone else was then, like, for whatever reason, they decided to do something similar to Covenant again, and then not have Dane and Matt on, and someone would have to imitate their style, it would still not be exactly the same,
Yeah.
because artistically, people do things a certain way, and there's a little bit of every artist in their work, and so on and so forth.
Well, it's like, there's a piece that I did. One of the things that I kind of was talking to Dark Horse about was sequel to Alien Isolation. It was a sequel. It was a comic. It was a graphic novel that would essentially only take in Prometheus, Covenant, Alien, and Isolation, and forget everything afterwards. It would kind of act like, Aliens and Alien 3 don't exist, and only build off what we have in those ones. But it would end leading into kind of an alternate version of Aliens with Burke. But one of the pieces that I did leading into this, which I think a lot of people are familiar with now, was an astronaut on a planet like LV-426. All the debris and storm and everything flying around, but in the distance was this kind of sheer kind of cliff,
Mm.
and in the side of the cliff is a doorway. It's like a temple, and it's essentially Giga's Lee piece, which everyone knows, and it's what Dane and Matt had to deal. They had to find a way around that with. I think Ev worked on that as well, where they
Yeah.
were trying to come up with ways of disfiguring Shaw's body.
Mm.
And one of them, which I think, and it's pretty much what ends up in the film, is a similar kind of version of this. But it was the Lee thing with the two pillars either side and the head encased, and but the head, instead of being the woman's head, is an engineer's head, akin to the ones in the the vase room in Prometheus and all the ones that you see around in Covenant. That's homage.
So,
You know,
so another point, the vase room, right? We always see this being discussed, is the mural on the wall.
yeah.
It's all just like basically like what I've been told, having spoken to artists behind the scenes, is that the person was given the outline and basically they were like, here are all of the alien assets. Make something out of Giga's stuff. This is going to be an homage to Giga. That's all it was supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to like be symbolic of anything for the engineers or whatever. It was just supposed to be, it's on the wall
Yeah.
and then it's gone. But it kind of blew up into this massive mythology where people are constantly trying to understand what's going on in this piece when it probably was a collage mac-up and an overlay.
It's one of those things, like I've heard similar stories from the sets where it's like we just designed a thing to look cool. Ridley saw it and he decided to run with it. You know, initially a lot of these designs were just kind of happenstance. And you know, more often than not, fans tend to know more or believe they know more about the property or about the film than the director does. The director knows the story. They know the story that they're telling most of the time. I'm generalizing here. You know, most of the time they want something to look a certain way. So there's a team of people that goes and builds a bunch of things to put in the background, to fill the set out, to make it look like a world. And a lot of that is incident. It's like in the Star Wars films, the Star Wars prequels, when like the dragon from Dragonheart flies by the Jedi Temple, and you know, E.T.'s family is in the Senate room, right? Like, you know, the digital artists just needed to fill all of these different aliens and these different backgrounds out, and they just kind of sneak these things in. And you know, it's not necessarily canon. The director kind of just goes, "Oh, yeah, it's kind of funny. Just do that." Because you know, obviously Spielberg and Lucas are best mates.
Yeah.
But you know, it's one of those things, and this is why the situation with art, you know, ganking. You know, I hesitate to call it theft, but like it can be construed as that. But like, you know, when you see a piece of art that you recognize as being directly something else, fans in particular notice this stuff. And I remember asking a couple of people, like I you know, messaged you as well. I'm like, is this for real? Do you see this? And I asked a couple other people, and like I had some guys come to me on Twitter saying, you know, are you seeing this? And there were people I hadn't contacted. So, you know, when you've got fans of a thing, they see these things. You know, you can't pull the wool over the eyes of fan bases because they're fans of those things. You know, and you know, it's dangerous ground because you know you get fans who gatekeep and everything else, and that's what I love about the alien community is that they're not, by and large, they're not gatekeepers. You know, I can still say that I'm not, Alien, and like, I love Alien 3. I like Alien 3 more than I like Aliens. And a lot of people think that's heresy. But no one drags me for it. Nobody drags me for it. And it's that classic thing of, Alien or Aliens. A lot of people really like Aliens. A lot of people really like Alien. And it's kind of, personal taste. But nobody drags anybody for the other, for liking one or the other. You can't say that about other communities. But the thing that I've noticed about the Alien fan base, is that they notice these things. Alien is a film that leaves deliberately a lot to the interpretation of the audience. It doesn't pander to its audience. By the nature of the production design, there is so much to look at, and there are so many things that are just kind of done. It's well documented that every design regarding the alien in the original was done so to be, and that's why Giga was hired. It was done so to be so alien that you couldn't make sense of it. You weren't meant to make sense of it. It's an alien. So, the nature of that means people are paying attention to details to try and understand or find out things. So, of course, the Alien fan base is detail driven. That's why I'm detail driven, because I'm a fan of this stuff. I love detail. And I love discovering things. I remember when I watched Alien in 4K, when I hosted that, that screening, the anniversary screening.
Yeah, that was a treat to be at. Me and Maitland, Project Acheron, were there.
Yeah. It sold out. It was a huge audience. And the most respectful cinema audience I think I've ever been in. And I remember watching it and just being blown away. Like, there were details in the 4K presentation that I'd never noticed before. I never realized how sweaty the Nostromo was. There is so much condensation on that on those sets. Like, everything is dripping.
Yeah.
That you could see all the way down the hallway. You could see everything. And it was just mind blowing. It was like watching the film again for the first time. Really, really, absolutely, because it was just such a visual feast.
I even forgot that Ev was there.
He was. No, I was about to say that, because Ev came down. We had drinks beforehand.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a really great thing to be part of. But yeah, that's the thing. Everyone's detail driven, so of course people are going to notice when something's not right.
I don't think I'd be able to, not say like I'm not gonna like completely pull my support. Of course, I want to still support Alien. I always buy the comics, but I'm not gonna buy the cover with Greg's art on it.
Well, I mean, look, yeah, that's and if that's a statement thing, I completely appreciate that. Like, I'm not going to tell people not to buy a thing if they want to buy it, right? Like, that's up to them, and it doesn't affect me whether they own it, because at the end of the day, it's a cover to a book. The physical product doesn't faze me. It's the principle of what's happened that really annoys me. And annoys me is a mild, form of what I'm getting at. Like, that's me being light about. But like, like I've told people have come to me and they said, I'm not getting it. I'm like, no, you can still get it, because these stories are great. They're great stories, and this is a great presentation of these stories. The Marvel Omnibus books are great. They're fantastic. Just get the one with, the original cover art. There's the direct market version. Just get that.
Yeah.
There's no point cutting off the nose to spite the face. You don't have to, thankfully, you don't have to get that book with that cover. But I'm not going to begrudge anyone who does.
Yeah.
I dare say, actually, no, I won't, because I know that the people at my bookshop have already said that they're not getting anything with Land's work in it. And I know other comic shops have said the same thing. and they're in a minority, I think, and that's their choice. I'm not telling them to do one thing or the other. I appreciate if they're doing that out of support for, creator rights or moral integrity, creative and artistic integrity. Because, as I said, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this out of just respect. It's because I don't want to see this happen. I don't want someone down the road to go through the same roller coaster of bloody disappointment and fury. And honestly, like I said this, like it's demeaning. It's really demeaning. And it may not be intentional. Like there's a big part of me that's like, Greg, I feel like has just Googled some images and just gone, that one, yeah, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. But in doing that, there is a wealth of material for these things that you can draw from. And we've said this before, I work when I reference things like when I was doing Defiance, I had alien isolation on one of my screens constantly so I could draw things. I built stuff out of 3D. I was even given assets from the guys at Creative Assembly. They gave me a 3D turnaround of Amanda Ripley when she was going to figure into things more. So, I have these things there. I would never go to someone else's work and I want that arm, I want that body, I want that, and then jimmy together a fucking some janky ass Frankenstein of a thing, and then palm it off as my own. And because it's disrespectful in my mind to those artists. So the thing that bothers me here is that he's taken drawings that are not official. They're fan art, and it's not just this extends beyond my art. This goes to Andy Blazer's piece, if that's where it's come from, and it goes to those fan constructed eggs, which are in the foreground. There are 2 eggs in there that are fan creations. They're fan replicas. They've gone and made them for like a Halloween thing, and the other one is a NECA replica. So it's not official art. They've gone and taken things from an artist, and the problem there is he either hasn't looked up who's responsible for the art, which is kind of problematic in itself, because in my mind it says he doesn't care about the person who drew it. And if he has, and he's seen my other pieces, then that's even worse, because he knows who I am and he still doesn't care. He knows that I can and have done these things in the past professionally up until very recently too, yet still felt he could collect a check largely off the back of my work and other people's. And that's the thing that really sucked. That's the thing that made me really angry. That was the demeaning thing, because it's like, well, that's how it reads to me. I know what I'm worth. Thank you very much. You doing this, it's insulting. You think I'm worth that much. That's what you think I'm worth. Cheers, buddy. Here's what I think you're worth. Just for thinking that. So it's that. That's kind of the key thing there.
What can studios like Marvel, like DC and Dark Horse do to help protect their artists and their properties, but still foster the fan community and support them and their creations and having their work out there?
It's hard because, like, I don't think anyone at Marvel saw Greg's cover and thought there was anything wrong with it. you know, they obviously, at least in my eyes, they don't know who I am, and that's fine. You know, I wouldn't expect anyone to. But the problem is there is a well-documented history of Greg doing this. You know, just like there are other artists who have well-documented histories. There's a guy, I can't remember his name. His name's Martina. He did covers, I think, for DC. Excuse me. Did a lot of covers for DC, and then same thing. People started realizing that he was ganking things from all over the place.
Yeah.
And you don't see his covers anymore. You know, you don't see him working on these things anymore. So clearly, someone at DC got wise, and you know that's what his name carries with it. And you know what I was saying before about the apathy. Clearly, enough people know what Greg is like. I would be shocked that anyone at Marvel didn't either. And the problem there is, despite me cutting some slack on, you know, Marvel not knowing my stuff, that's fine. They know what Greg is, you know, his track record's like. It's very well documented. Like you would be really hard pressed to convince me someone at Marvel didn't. So you know that's the risk that you're running. You know, it's like when you walk past a house that says "Don't pat the dog," and you're kind of like, "Oh, but it's so cute." You know, you get bitten. You were warned.
Yeah.
It's that thing. You know, it's the same kind of thing. So I think what companies can do, because it's hard to police. Like you can't police everyone. Not every editor can know every piece of art that's ever made or every piece of fan art that's ever made. It's impossible. It's the hardest thing to ask. So I think all that can really be done is when people call these things out, that it gets acknowledged. And the problem, the thing that really like irritates me a lot, there are a lot of things that irritate me a lot about this, but this one in particular is I know Greg can draw, and he can draw well. You know, his art, there's like a 10-year period where his art it's all, you know, at least as far as I can tell, it's mostly his.
Yeah.
And then he kind of started doing this photorealistic thing where it all started kind of, that's when people started noticing these things. So I know he can draw, and he's probably, you know, I'd say there are bits on this Alien cover that he's drawn himself. Because despite the fact that we've been able to identify, or at least we believe we've been able to identify, and shout out to, you know, the guys that have sort of been there as well. Because there's been a lot of guys who've kind of jumped in and gone, "This is what's up," and I'm like, "Holy shit, it's a perfect match." You know, it's just one of those things. They're going to have to. I think they need to pay attention to that kind of noise, and they might be. I don't know that they're not, but I don't know that they.
I think that's the problem, right? They haven't said anything.
No one said anything.
No one's issued an apology. Like, we'll look into this.
Yeah, and it's like
it's radio
I don't.
silence.
That's it. That's it. And it's been, you know, we're on, you know, we're going to be on 4 days now. And it's just like, right now, I feel that they're just kind of waiting for it to slide away, for apathy to roll in, or for the next drama to roll in, and all this to be forgotten about. Until the next time he gets caught out doing something else. And that's my thing. I don't want it to happen to someone else.
I think that they severely underestimate the alien fandom. Like, this is not a threat. By the way, everyone,
No,
I'm not telling you to go after Marvel. I'm not telling you to go after Greg Land.
And I'm not saying this either. Like, I don't like the guy. Like, if I, like, just from this, like, principally, I don't like what's happened. I'm not going to judge him for his situation, but this is how it looks from where I see it. So I have a predisposition based on what I've just experienced. So if he's ever in the same room, I'm going to want to ask questions. And I'm not going to be particularly happy.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so if you would ask questions, so would everyone else. Like, now everyone in the media, Bleeding Pool, ABP Galaxy, Perfect Organism podcast, like it's not
The
quiet.
Observer, a New
The
York
Observer,
newspaper, got to it
yeah,
first.
yeah. So that means that once this comes out, like my steps as like a small town blogger would be, hey, I want to meet this artist. I want to find out how they came up with the art. When did they start loving Alien? What was their inspiration? You know what?
That's it.
The only question that I've got is like, what the fuck and why?
Yeah. Because, like, I don't think anyone, like, in the fan base, this is why fan sites, all fan sites are like this. What you can't ask those questions if you notice those things unless you're being completely facetious,
Mm,
unless you're trying to trap them. And I don't think, I feel like Greg would know that. I feel like Greg would know that, especially given the noise that's been made, which I didn't anticipate. I don't want people thinking that I've gone out there to, make a destructive amount of noise. I don't want any of that. Like, I don't want to annoy. This is, I've deliberately not gone, and maybe I should have, directly to the talent management, the editor in chief, chief creative officer. They're all on Twitter,
mm,
and they engage with people every now and then. And I haven't gone. I have guys who sort of claim to be friends of mine at writing big books at Marvel, and they've been noticeably absent in all this. But I've had huge name artists, very vocally supportive, and in agreement. And it's just kind of like, I don't want to annoy anyone, but I don't want this to continue. Like, this is not a good thing. And the comics industry's been through a lot. Like, the last year has been rampant. There's been a lot of situations where a lot of predatory actors have been outed in the industry, and I think that's great. I think it needs to happen. But I find it interesting that we can do that. And I know it took a long time. It's a hard thing. It is not an easy thing. I cannot fathom what some of these women and men have been through and what it's done to them. And I'm not saying that this is on the same level as that, but what I am saying is we really shouldn't have an issue calling this out, and we really shouldn't have an issue dealing with it, because we've dealt with worse.
yeah.
And we are dealing with worse. So this kind of thing, I'm not here to rock anybody. I just want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. And the only way that can happen is if people are called out, and is if people, are civil about it too. Like, don't be an idiot about it. I completely get people being angry about it. But, it was put to me that if I cause a riot, and this is something I thought about myself, if I cause a riot, I'm more likely to walk away from this with less job prospects than Greg Land down the road, because I'm seen as a troublemaker, which is a fascinating thing, because my work has been, I believe, violated. I believe I've had, if it's good enough for someone to steal from, then I'm good enough to do that work without question. If an editor has signed off on someone's work, that is comprised of my work, my entire work is good enough for that job.
Mm.
And going back to what we were saying at the start, I am on a benefit scheme, working a day job, you know, under a government that's just announced a recession, in this COVID lockdown situation. So all I am seeing is this, and I can't expect people to know that, right?
Mm.
But that's just the reality of it. So of course I feel like I deserve that work. If it's good enough, if it is good enough, if it is deemed good enough for that to be passed off and paid for,
Mm.
you know, of course I deserve that.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying give me work either, because my whole career has been built off, I have prided myself on not asking for jobs. You know, it's probably been to my detriment, to be honest, in that I've always believed that if someone wants me to draw something for them, they will ask.
Mm.
And I would much rather get work that way.
Mm.
And for the most part, yeah, that's been exactly what's happened. And I've got dream jobs through that.
Mm.
You know, I still got a few I want to tick off the list, but, you know, I want to do my own things as well.
Yeah. Well,
Every,
what's the point if this guy's gonna end up getting any possible job of
well,
yours
that's
anyway?
it. That's absolutely it. It's like, why am I submitting myself, you know, to this kind of embarrassment, you know, because I like a thing, right? It's like, you know, if this is what I'm competing with and this is what's beating me, like, why am I even trying? And, you know, there are jokes. People have made jokes. It's like, you know, well, clearly all you need to do to get a job at Marvel is to trace someone else's work,
Mm.
which isn't true. But clearly in some cases, you can get away with it.
Mm.
And it's completely disheartening. I'm sure there are other artists at Marvel who see, you know, they're probably working their guts out, and they'll see this and they'll be like, it's embarrassing that my name is next to this guy's name
Yeah.
when this is clearly a you know, a collage.
Mm.
You know, I put all this hour into my Wolverine book, and you know, it's identifiably mine, but that's like identifiably 5 other people's.
Yeah.
But again, I can't speak for people. That's just me sort of hypothesizing.
Yeah. Well, you know, if this was anyone within punching distance, I could honestly say that I would smash him. um, because
I,
it's this
I
is
can't condone, and I'm not going to condone any kind of
no,
violence.
of
But like
course not. And like,
the thought definitely had crossed my mind. Like when I first saw it, it was like, I'm not a violent person, and that's why I ended up getting bitten by a person, because I wasn't going to fucking take them down first. Like I was going to give them an opportunity, but she bit me. Then I got violent. Um, and you know, it's outside of Nazis, it's just not the way. Like I absolutely agree that if you're a Nazi in this day and age, you deserve a fucking punch in the face at the least, the very least.
mm,
Um, but you know, this guy, it's kind of like, yeah, I went through that point where it's like, oh, fuck, if this guy was in the room right now, I would fucking. But no, and then I thought about it, and again, this is what I was saying about when that woman bit me. It's kind of like I can't get angry about it. Like I just want to know why.
yeah.
Like I mean, I can get angry because I am angry, but I can't like project that because it doesn't get
Mm.
anywhere. It doesn't get me anywhere.
Mm.
If anything, like the good thing about being angry about this is just fueling me to do other things.
Yeah.
Um, and seeing other people get angry about it too is inspiring,
Mm.
and it really does mean a lot because it means I'm not unjust in feeling that way. But staying angry is healthy in a sense because it can motivate people to do things, and I'm just hoping it does. Like I'm
Mm.
hoping it's the outcome, and I'm hoping it's not violent. I'm just hoping it's a positive outcome wherein people acknowledge that this has upset people,
Mm.
and it doesn't happen to anyone else down the road. If I have to suck this up, but it means, you know, the space of time between me and the next person is less,
Mm.
or like the number of people this happens to after me is less,
Mhm.
because it's always going to happen to people. But if the number of people this happens to after me is less, then, you know, that's the most important thing.
Mm.
And that's ultimately what you know, what I want out of this, which is why it's acknowledgement. You know, I'm fine with Marvel. I have nothing against Marvel at all. Obviously, my grievances with Greg are present,
Mm.
and if there's no acknowledgement, which is apparently what's happened in the past, then that sucks.
Mm.
And I will hold that against him, but I'm not going to lose hair over it, because if that's what he thinks of me, then that's going to inform what I think of him. So, and it does. It informs completely
Uh,
until
I
someone proves me otherwise.
well, yeah. Like this. So for those who don't know, I run a artist co-working space. I specialize in getting people's ideas, launching them, and then marketing them, and them starting their business. I'm a business incubator. So we encounter, plagiarism, people stealing ideas and modifying them. There's only a certain amount of ways that you can come up with like a new style of shoelace to be able to mass market.
Mm,
But it's all about getting there first. But you got there first. You're not a small fry. You're in this book along with a bunch of other people who have worked on the films with directors. Denis Villeneuve is in here. What's to say that it's not going to be someone else's work next time in that book,
that's it.
or another book?
That's it. That's absolutely it. And it's just like, you know, it's hard to police. I get that it's super hard to police, but the easiest way to do it right now is, and it's what other companies have done, is they've recognized names, and they've, you know, been careful about how they do it. You know, I know things have happened at Dark Horse where they've had issues with plagiarism and they've dealt with it, and I know there've been situations at IDW where they've had the same sorts of things, and all these companies deal with it.
Mm.
Um, which is why it's disappointing that, you know, this is still happening. And to the best of my knowledge, too, like, people have said to me that this is the most egregious it's been.
Yeah, there's no
Uh,
history, like there's no record of this ever happening that another published artist's work has been
yeah,
copied.
it's been like photos from films and stills and things like that, like
Yeah.
people's faces from, and like I know there are, like, there's a Nightwing thing where it's
Mm.
Nightwing jumping over a rooftop ledge. And you know, that's an obvious one, but it's like that's not quite the same as this. Technically, yes, it's the same, but like the gravity of it is different.
Mm.
Um, and like that's, you know, that's something in itself. It really is something in itself. So where it goes from here, I've got no idea. I
Mm.
really hope it doesn't slide backwards into apathy. It will. Um, I just hope that there's enough kind of movement behind it.
There's
In
even
a,
a web page dedicated to him actually swiping
there are
people's work.
several. There are blogs. Yeah, there are several. Like it's not, you know, it's not an unknown quantity.
Mm.
Um, it's just it's hard. Like it again. I know what what my value is. I know what my work's worth. You
Mm.
know, it's just, it sucks when um this sort of thing happens,
Mm.
and there's no acknowledgement of it. And I'm not necessarily saying to me.
Yeah.
Um, I hope that someone has noticed and something is being said right now, and that is that until you start drawing your own stuff, no, sorry.
Mm.
Um, and I'd be happy with that. I'd be fine seeing Greg Land doing covers and interiors
Mhm.
as long as he is. He literally had a book out, I think, this week, which was like a Thor Fortnite crossover.
Mm,
Apparently, Marvel characters are in Fortnite at the moment, and for some reason, Fortnite appears in a Thor comic.
mm,
And he traced promo stills for that. I had guys from a Fortnite fan base coming at me saying, "Yeah, check this out too," and it just
mm.
wasn't even trying. And I get it, like it's a couple of panels in a Thor comic, just a couple of panels, but it still sticks out like a pair of dog's testicles. Um, but I think the thing that they're relying on too, or maybe he's relying on, is that Thor readers don't care enough about Fortnite to go and look.
Mm,
But the Fortnite people sure as fuck did. Um, and I think that's kind of like you were saying. I feel like there was an underestimation of the Alien fan base and the
yeah.
brand in general.
Mm.
Like I feel like there's a real underestimation of the brand in general, um, which is a shame.
I hope
But
this isn't kind of like a foretelling of how it's going to be handled in future because like I've said on my blog, if this is the way they're going to ring in Marvel with someone who plagiarizes work,
yeah,
what are we going to expect out of the content of the stuff that's coming forward? What are we going to expect out of continuity of
in,
characters and creation?
look. In fairness, I believe that the editor responsible for the collections is different to the editor that's, I think, going to be taking on the monthlies.
I can only hope.
Um, it usually is. Usually, collections editors are very different to the ongoing editors.
Mm.
And I believe someone said that to me on Thingo. Um, so hopefully that's not the case. Marvel's got a lot of licenses that have just kind of come out of nowhere. Like they're doing Ultraman,
Mm.
which was a surprise. And a friend of mine's working on that. And like I think that'll be a great book. Like if Kyle gets to do what I know he's passionate about with that book, it'll be great. And I
Mm.
think the co-writer is Australian.
Mm.
But you know, when you get a big company that has a lot of licenses that aren't their flagship characters, it's a hard thing to kind of judge. You know, there are some characters where they can just throw anything out there and they know people will buy it because it's just the character
Mm.
or it's the book. The popularity of the book, it doesn't matter whether the art isn't great
Mm.
or the writing is subpar, one or the other. They know the book will sell.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, they cancel it. You know, it's that simple. It's like Hellblazer. Like Hellblazer just got cancelled because it wasn't selling well enough. It was an amazing book.
Mm.
Um, but you know, it was like when I worked on Mad Max. You know, I was told pretty much up front that like when the film became successful, when they realized how successful the film was,
Mm.
there was you know a vague regret that they really essentially churned out on a production level,
Mm.
churned out the comics. Um,
Mm.
because if they had have known they were going to be the film was going to be as big as it was, they probably would have allowed it more breathing space to you know be better. Not that the books weren't great. I'm happy with a lot of the stuff in there, but it was a stressful and very tight deadline.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's just the way these things are. You know, it's licenses. Licenses are never as big a moneymaker as the flagship characters.
Mm.
And that's just reality. So of course they're not going to have as much attention to detail put on them, unless of course you get an editor who you know is a fan who gives a shit. And I'm not saying that the editors don't give a shit about their work, but I'm saying that when you know when there's a deadline and a budget and those things are restrictive, of
Mm.
course there are priorities that have to be made.
Yeah, but there's that certain attention to detail that fans have, like having spoken to you about like the way you draw the aliens and how you intimately know their body. Obviously, you'd be able to see a piece of work and go, "Hey, that's good," and have uh,
Yeah,
you know, you would know what you're talking about. You're a connoisseur of these things. Whereas someone who is, paid in a big machine in Marvel, who may be a fan of like a certain part of it, but
Mm.
not necessarily know enough about Alien, I feel like they need to hire an Alien guy or an Alien girl or someone who kind of knows their stuff, because if this is going to happen constantly, I don't foresee comics selling well in future. Um, we had our own criticisms of what Dark Horse was releasing in terms of the character arc for um, Amanda coming out,
Yeah.
or like what Fox wanted to do with Amanda's character,
Yeah.
and the massive changes between Davis's character from the start of Defiance to like the end of Resistance, and so on and so forth. So, like we are critical of stuff that's already come out, but like at least we weren't critical of the art. It came down to story
Yeah.
arc
I mean, look,
and characters.
you can be critical of art. Like, people are critical of my art. It's fine. Like, I learn things from that. Absolutely.
Mm,
And some of those things help change the way I now draw the creature itself. It's like I was saying, I was a really big fan of the Isolation Aliens draw, like how it was kind of big and chunky and like, yeah. So it looked like it would just tear you apart. And it had that really great grin. Like, I loved it.
mm,
But I also loved, like, like the spitter in Colonial Marines. And Colonial Marines, by and large, is a very not unfairly maligned game.
mm,
Um, there are elements that I love of all these things, and they inform things, and then people who have genuine critiques about things, constructive critiques about things, I've learned things from that. I'm going, oh, that's not a bad point. Like, I'm going to try that, and lo and behold, yeah, it works,
mm.
and it does look better sometimes.
Yeah.
So, these things help evolve. So there's no problem being critical with art, especially because it's a visual medium.
Mm,
Like, if you're not going to be critical of, like, this is a big problem with comics right now, is like there's a huge thing right now where, like, you'll read a review and it's
mm,
all about the writer.
mm,
I'm like, it's if it was about the um this may as well have been a novel, because there's no mention of the artist.
mm.
You'll get paragraphs of stuff about the story and what happens to the characters and everything else, and you get like, oh yeah, the art's fine if you're lucky. So I think, if anything, it's great to be critical of comic art,
Mm,
because it pushes the medium, and it means that artists are getting credit, they're getting noticed. There's a whole movement where it's like, I've said this plenty of times, like, it's a writer's market, and part of that has informed why I started writing again. I've had plenty of people tell me, it's like, why aren't you writing anymore? Because a lot of the stuff I did write was really well received. The turtle stuff, people still tell me, why aren't you writing the turtles anymore? And that's a whole other thing. That's, I've sort of moved from that, but
mm,
I do miss writing. And the thing is, now it's like, I should be writing my own things.
mm.
I can do it, and like, that's what I'm doing now. Like, I've got these murder walls up in my house where I have notes and scribbles and everything up,
Yeah.
putting a story together. And that's the reason I'm doing that, is because you know I it's the only way to do it.
Mm,
Otherwise I'm just going to be the support guy. It's like, half the time the best supporting actor is better than the guy that wins best actor in a film.
yeah.
And it's kind of like having a film where the guy that is the support, or the woman is the supporting actor, who is infinitely better than the lead,
Mm,
but the lead walks away with the Oscar. Like, all anyone talks about is the lead.
mm,
It's the same kind of thing. We've reached this point in comics where it's all about the writers. It's
mm,
all about the writers. And books live and die by the behavior of writers.
mm,
I've had this happen. Um, and it's just, it's not balanced.
mm,
And I think that also has some kind of say in the situation that's come up. You know, writers, sorry, artists are disposable. There's so many
Yeah.
people who want to draw comics, and it's
Mm.
just like that's a really disgusting mentality to have. It's a really insulting mentality to have. But unfortunately, it's kind of also true. So you've just got to make yourself indisposable,
Mm.
which sounds like a pretentious thing and a really arrogant thing to say.
Mm.
But the only way you can do that is if you really become your own person and you write and draw your own stuff and you prove that you're worth it and that you can do it. And I say to people these days, if they want me to do a thing, the only way I'm going to do it is if I can write and draw it. Or the writer is someone that, I believe is above my standard of writing.
Mm.
And that's not to denigrate other writers. I've had plenty of writers that I love their work, but taking on a job now that isn't entirely mine is like a backward step in my personal development.
Mm.
I feel like I've done enough time doing that. I am confident enough and want to prove myself as someone as what I am. I can write, I can draw, I can I'm learning how to letter.
Mm.
I want to be able to do these things. And that's not necessarily from a financial thing, because obviously, yeah, if I'm doing more things, I'm getting paid for it, but it's more from a creative thing. And it's also to do with like the red tape, because the fewer links there are in the food chain that is making a comic book, the production line. There's been jobs where I've had things blown out completely because, like, sorry, my screen's kind of go. There we go.
Yep.
I've had things blown out completely, and it's affected my life outside of the work life because I'm waiting on writers,
Mm.
and half the time the writers are waiting on licenses.
Mm.
And my part as an illustrator is the most work intensive. Anyone can say what they want. The illustrator does the most work in any comic,
Mm.
hands down. And because it's a visual medium, if a book looks bad,
Yeah.
it's going to read bad too. It doesn't matter how good the writing is. If the art's
Mm.
shit, it's going to bring the whole thing down.
Mm.
So it's just me trying to cut out as many sort of bits of red tape and bits of trouble, and then everything is on my head. I would rather have it. It's a bit of a control freak thing, sure,
Yeah.
but it's then everything is on me. I don't have to wait for anyone. I'm answerable to myself and my editor, and colorist if I work with a colorist, or a letterer if I work with a letterer.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to be pulling an excuse like, well, if I hadn't got the script on time, which is a big problem in comics.
Mm.
Not everyone I've worked with has been like that, but there have been scripts definitely blown out. And not through any fault of the writer necessarily. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It's just a problem. And I'd rather cut as many problems out of the thing. But I'd also, I just want to express myself creatively.
Mm.
I came into things as a writer. That's the only reason I started drawing was because I kind of could, and I got better.
Yeah.
I'm not an illustrator. I've become an illustrator, but I didn't start out that way. I started out as a filmmaker and a
Mm.
writer,
Mm.
and it just led to this.
Yeah.
And now I am fully into it, and I know that I am these things, and I know what my worth is as each of these things, and it's just a matter of going, that's what I want now.
Mm.
And that's why this pisses me off so much, is because it's like, why would anyone bother trying with big companies and big jobs when this guy, who should have been, if what is said is true, probably should have been cut loose a while back.
Yeah. I
Um,
think for me personally, as a female who loves the alien universe, I already have to put up with
of course,
a lot of bullshit from guys.
yeah,
But the
which is
fact that
amazing because Aliens is the whole thing is a feminine narrative.
yeah, and if they're getting someone who is so, I feel, is anti-feminine with his work because he's tracing porn actors and the O face,
Well,
I
yeah,
find this offensive. Like,
yeah,
I physically feel ill, like even just watching any of the videos covering all of the stuff that he'd done. I mean, like, Like,
See, that's
you
the
know,
problem. Like
and I want
comics,
to make it clear, sex work is real work. There is respect for me with sex workers, but the
mhm,
fact that he does this with comics and has this like, this is the way I see women, and like for this cover, this is the way I see Alien.
yeah.
Well, I'm done. I
Well,
don't want to see
part of me was
anything.
thinking, if I could find that website that's gone and found all the actresses that he's traced, like if I could reach out to those actresses and say, hey, let's form like a little fucking thing here, because this is what this guy's done. He's done this to me. Like he's done this to you. Like how do you
Yeah,
feel?
like a survivors group.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see how all of this kind of comes together. Again,
Yeah,
at this point, there's been enough time between it happening and now that, and again, I haven't checked the things online in a while. And I've been trying to be good. Like people have been great, and I'm trying to get back to everyone because I think they deserve that respect. And I'm missing people, and it's driving me nuts. So if I've missed people and they're watching this, then I'm really, really sorry. I've been just like when it blew up, it was just incredible. Like I couldn't keep up with it. I was trying, but I've got to sleep and I've got to work. And the first night this happened, I could not sleep. Just couldn't sleep. I was too angry.
mm,
And I was racking my brain with like, where do I go from here? Like, what do I do? What is the recourse? I couldn't sleep. Didn't sleep at all that night. Barely slept the following night.
mm,
And I'd sit down. I've got to draw these things for NECA, and NECA treat me great. There's been sort of hiccups in the past, but it's like, and that's just kind of communication stuff because
mm,
it's hard being on the other side of the world and everything else, and it's a completely different industry to what I'm used to. But Randy at NECA treats me great. David Silver is amazing. They've got it all locked down, and I feel really valued by those guys.
mm.
There's some great. There was one point where we were, I think I can talk about this. If it doesn't happen, don't get disappointed. I'm saying that generally to everyone
Mm,
listening, but like there were things that I've handed in with these Predator boxes where they're like, Randy was like, I really want to see if we can maybe organize getting prints of these made, like limited prints of these made, to sell online or whatever else.
mm.
Particularly the Guardian Predator. I think the Guardian Predator is really gonna. I think people are gonna. Yeah, I won't say anything else, but look out for the Guardian Predator box.
Mm,
Um, they treat me great. But then sitting down and drawing, because I have to draw aliens, like I'm helping design the bull alien, which was they're redoing the Kenner bull alien, and that's part of it. And that may or may not appear on one of these boxes. We're not sure yet, but I'm drawing these things, and even when I'm drawing these things, it's like, fuck, like these guys treat me great, and I'm grinding my teeth while I'm drawing these things because of what's going on.
mm.
And I've got commissions to do, like of the alien, various different aliens, and I really want to do them. It's just like when I sit down to do it, it's kind of like, fuck. It's really like it's there.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you can't take a break from it and kind
no,
of like have a bit of perspective on the whole
well,
situation.
especially with the lockdown situation too, because it's just like I go to work, I come home, and I go to work again, and it's just there because I can only get outside for an hour. I can only break away from this for so long.
Mm,
So it's just it's constantly, and because I work at a shop that sells these books as well as other Alien and Predator merchandise and books and the films and everything else, it's there as well. So I'm constantly surrounded by this. So I've got to make peace with it, and it's really hard because there still hasn't been any acknowledgement,
mm.
and it's just like it's irritating.
Yeah.
It's like that James Bond villain from, I can't remember which one, but He's been shot in the head, and the bullet is very slowly working its way towards his brain. Eventually, he'll die. You know, this whole situation is like the bullet in Robert Carlyle's head, slowly working its way through my brain. And it's just gnawing. It's really gnawing.
And I just want to say to everyone, like, being in lockdown compounds everything that you experience, because
Completely.
especially for us, because we're so isolated. Like, you do go to work, I still go to work, I still volunteer and so, but like for me, everything that was happening, because I'd posted the picture, because I'm friends with you, because I'm friends with all of the people who are covering this, my phone was going off like crazy, and I just, it was only a fraction of what you were experiencing.
I had to turn the notifications off.
Yeah.
And I hate, like, that's just because it was just getting too much. Like, my phone would die, like,
Yeah.
so quickly, or I have to turn it off overnight because otherwise it'd just be going off constantly. So, you know, it's nuts, and you know, it's great that that's happening. It really, like, it's incredible that that's happening, because the outpour of love is just incredible and support is incredible. And it does make me realize that I don't need these things in my, like, I don't need to be the aliens guy. You know, it just kind of worked out that way, that I'm one of them at least. And you know, if push came to shove, of course I'd draw aliens again. I'd fucking love to, like, on this kind of level, like doing
Yeah.
the comics and stuff. And Predator, like, I would love to be able to do the stories I had cooking, and that Spencer and I talked about. And honestly, too, like, Spencer was the first guy to come out and really, really show, like, throw a heavy amount of support out there. Like, I cannot thank that guy enough. He is one of the most dedicated guys to what he does and to his work and to the people that he works with and cares about. And I cannot thank the guy enough. And you know, we're talking about other things as well now. But you know, the support he's shown for all of this has been incredible. And it's, you know, it's just that everyone's been so great.
It
And
doesn't cost anything to be decent
that's
or
it.
honorable, or have a bit of, or like even just come out and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I know I've done this in the past and I've done this to other people, but what I did for this,
Yeah.
he should have just go, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what else to say, but I'm sorry. And that's what he just needs to come and say.
Yeah. You know, I've had this happen, not this, but I've had situations where you know, I've been like that myself, and it's been like, you know, I made a mistake, and you know, I know that now. Like, I see that, I acknowledge that, and this is how I intend on moving forward from here to make sure that that doesn't happen again. It doesn't affect anyone else again. And I've had, you know, people do the same. Editors, you know, there was an editor that I had you know, we had a really kind of bad sort of falling out over the way a project went, you know, years ago. And you know, we just kind of, just with everything kind of going on right now, you know, I just kind of sent him an email saying, hey, you know, how are you? I realize it's been a while and we haven't spoken, obviously, because we weren't on the best of terms when that last project ended. But I, you know, just hope you're doing well. And because he'd been promoted a couple of times, I just sort of said, you know, congratulations on everything. I hope you and everyone else is fine. And you know, we had this really, really great chat. And we both acknowledged that, you know, we were both at fault. And you know, now we're talking about working together again. It's great. So there's nothing wrong, and you don't have anything to lose by acknowledging when you have made a mistake, and you have everything to gain. And that's the flip side of all of this. This is why the lack of acknowledgement bugs me. This is, you know, it's all part of it. There's this, it's such an onion. This whole thing is such an onion. And every layer's got its own bloody story to it. And it's just, you know, it is what it is. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it all goes. But I can tell now, like, there's nowhere near as much noise about it as there was. And I think that's what they were hoping for. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you know, like us at Aliens Gateway Station, which is like the Facebook group, we
Yep.
discuss everything about the extended universe. we've done a successful meme campaign where we've managed to get Alex White to have another book written. That's an
Yeah,
alien book, you know? We're known for like being pains in the asses, but funny about it.
but that's it. Yeah, there's ways to go about it, and it's it's tongue in cheek. It's well natured. It's well meaning. It's everything else. There are huge differences between the way certain things get done and the way other things get done. And again, like I've been saying, I don't want people marching up towards, with pitchforks towards, Marvel headquarters or towards whoever the editor is. But, I don't want them
And let's
thinking,
speak about this realistically. I'm probably never going to be in the same room as Greg Land to punch him anyway.
well, exactly. I mean, the likelihood of conventions being a thing again is
Yeah.
way off. Um, and,
What we want is
that's
acknowledgement, right?
pretty much. Um, and I just don't want it to happen again
Mm.
because it sucks, really sucks. And that's really the best word for it. People have thrown around a lot of words. It's disrespectful. Again, assuming this is going under the assumption and the belief that this is what has happened. It's disrespectful. It's disgusting. It's lazy. It's insulting. It's infuriating. It sets a bad precedent. It doesn't look good for anyone else involved in the approval of it. And it leaves a bad taste in the mouth of not just me, but like way more people, like a lot of people. And you bundle all that together, and that just fucking sucks.
Mm.
And it sucks that this is such a well-loved brand, and it's such a well-loved company that
Mm.
currently has that brand
Mm.
that's
And this is
allowed
the
it to
thing.
happen.
They're knocking it out of the park with everything else under Marvel. And we as fans were hoping, praying that this was the correct move for Marvel to make.
Hmm.
But if this is how it, if they're gonna be okay with this, then what else are they gonna be okay with? Um,
Well, yeah,
mm,
that's the other thing there, and it's just, again, like this situation, all we can do is just sort of, I think all people could do is just kind of wait and see.
mm,
Um, making noise is great. Being civil about it is more important,
yeah.
because there are ways you can make noise and there are ways you can be angry about things, but there's constructive ways of doing it.
Mm.
And people could argue that I was being antagonistic, but when I put the thing out there, it's kind of like, I'm not
And
wrong, am I? Like, I was looking
how
for
could you not be
affirmation,
upset? Like,
of course, but I'm not going to, scream for people to, pick up arms. Um, but if anyone, again, because I have people who follow me and friends who work for this company, and it would be great if, hey, like, if this is not wrong, can one of you maybe have a word to someone? Like, that's pretty much it.
or acknowledge it's happening, because like nothing's worse than like having something happen to you, and then when you are looking for that support network, people who are supposedly friends just ghost you.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Huge part of it. And the other thing is too, like, I got a really long memory. A really long memory. I'm not going to forget this. I'm not going to forget who and who didn't show support here,
Mm,
because it flat out sucks. And yeah, I'm not going to forget
mm,
that. And it may come somewhere down the road where one of these people kind of goes, "Hey, we should do a thing." I'm like, do you remember when this happened? And it'll be like, you know, I don't forget this shit, so I don't trust.
mm.
Why should I trust this person? Why should I trust you?
Yeah.
Because you left me high and dry there. Um, so that's a whole other that's a whole other part of this. That's other people. It's got nothing to do with
Mm,
Greg per se, or whoever's involved in this thing. It's just that's a whole other thing.
mm. So, like, to cap this off, because like for people who don't know, it's like 12:44 in the morning.
I've had a
I mean,
lot of late nights. I've had a lot of late nights, and
yeah,
it is wearing on me.
same here. I was actually like, I thought this was gonna go at least for 2 hours, and then I'd go back to the studio, so till 2 a.m., and then walk
Mm,
home. I'm not gonna go back to the studio. I think I'm
yeah,
just gonna
don't do
call
that.
it a night.
Good,
I'll
healthy.
I'll I'll go back tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. Just yeah. Right now, everyone's got to look after themselves and do the right thing. Really.
Yeah. Um, it's unfortunate because like this whole situation, I was hoping that we would have a COVID catch up and do the mother room and talk about, what's it like,
Yeah.
have nicer things to talk about other than this experiences that has happened to you, which is it
Still
could really
early
could have been
days.
avoided.
Look. I mean, things could still happen. Who knows? I'm
Mm,
hopeful. Hopeful. Or that's all you can do. You can be hopeful. But I'm not. I'm anything. I'm nothing if not pragmatic,
yeah.
and that's a big part of it right now. So I'm just kind of being realistic about things, but still not. Ben Templesmith said he paraphrased the great quote from Independence Day about going quietly into the night, and I'm like, that's very apt. And he goes, don't let go of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I have no intention of letting go of it, even if things quieten down. Like I'm never going to forget this. And
There's so many big names who know about what's happened to you,
mm,
and they're equally as pissed, and people are
yeah,
on your side.
yeah,
And
and like I can't say how grateful I am for that. It's
yeah,
incredible.
um, it's really good that there is that support with people who have balls, who
Mm,
you know, or or are not afraid to
yeah,
stand up and say, you know what, this is where we draw the line as creatives. Like, you just don't do this to people. You just don't do this. Period.
that's it.
Mm,
That's it. It's just it's respect.
yeah.
That's ultimately what all this is. It's respect. It's respect, and like I say this all the time, but the one thing I value more than anything else in this world is integrity. And it's just completely absent in this whole incident. It's just absent.
Mm.
So hopefully something comes of it. Hopefully some kind of integrity can be regained, um, or rebuilt.
Well, I'm going to be reaching out to Greg Land for an interview anyway about the cover. I'm not
That'll
going
be
to shy
interesting.
away from asking questions. I wonder if he has the balls to talk to me because I will.
I'd be curious. Like this is something some people have said to me. They're like, "Why didn't you? Because it was brought up in the article with the Observer. Like I didn't reach out to him because standard form for the comics industry is that you reach out to someone and you don't get an answer. It's just you got Buckley's if you think you're going to get an answer out of people, and that's what everyone else has said.
Mm,
You try to reach out to these people and you get nothing.
mm,
So like me reaching out saying, "Hey, did you steal this from me? Is this like, am I seeing this right?" I would not expect an answer from that email,
mm.
like just based on what's happened. What's he going to do? Immediately give up and go, "Oh yeah, shit, sorry." Why would he?
Mm,
Works out there, and it's just going to mean more trouble for him. I could be wrong. I would hope I was wrong, but I didn't
mm.
see the point of reaching out to him because the damage was done.
Yeah.
And it was very quickly established what he thought of me
Yeah.
in my mind.
There's
Um,
going to be a lot of upcoming coverage, like as well as like obviously the stuff that he's done, the Thor and uh Fortnite crossover.
mm,
So, he's going to be in the limelight for a while. I guess what Marvel or Disney will have to make the decision is, do they want to continue? continually get negative press in regards to him.
That's it. I guess it's just whatever it's worth to them.
There's been a lot of people who've been very vocal about not wanting to work with him at all as well as pull his books
Great.
from the store, stuff like that. So, hopefully it amounts to something other than another notch on his bedpost, so to speak.
That's really all I can do. I can just
Yeah.
hope and be realistic about things. And I hope that people continue to be realistic about things and angry about things, because I'd rather people be angry than apathetic,
Mm,
as long as they're being constructively angry.
yeah.
Great.
And
Because,
support artists. At the end of the day, like that's it. That's another thing. An artist attacking another artist. You guys have got to have each other's backs.
yeah, like it's been said plenty of times, I don't want to be doing it, but, the situation being what it is, I don't see any other course of action. Because if it is what it is, then it's disrespect.
Mm,
And why should I respect someone who has no respect for me?
yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I guess, Greg, if you ever do end up watching this and see all of the things that haven't been afraid to call you, if you don't want to end up in urbandictionary.com as a terminology of being a complete ripoff, which is being landed or Greg landfill or whatever the amount of names that people have come up with for you,
yeah,
uh, if you want to be able to how does he sleep at night? I just don't know. Um, if you don't want to be coined under these terms, be positions besides 70s porn, just stop. Like you can draw. I would kill to be able to draw as much as you can. Like all of
yeah.
your early stuff, there was something happening there. It could have progressed to something even more.
Yep.
Now it's just repetitive shit.
Well, that's it. And also, if you don't want to be, having to lock down your Wikipedia entry, I think that's been changed like 40 times over the first 24 hours of this. Like, it was hilarious watching it evolve. But yeah, at the end of the day, like, that's it. Just fucking stop.
Mm,
Seriously. Like,
yeah.
if he thinks that people aren't going to notice, then it's arrogance. And if he doesn't care that people notice, then that's even worse.
Mm,
So, like, why would anyone want to work with someone like that?
yeah.
That's just it at the end of the day. I don't care how fast they hit their deadlines and how nice they might be in person. If that's what this person is like behind closed doors to make a buck, fuck that.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the bottom line on it all.
Hmm. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Lara. It's been too long.
I feel like this is like kind of like the mother confessional, actually,
Not
about
far off
what's.
it.
Yeah, it's been unreal. I hope our next catch up is because you've landed a job or got something
We'll see. We'll see.
cooking.
I got some things happening. There'll be things popping up. You know, I'm getting back into drawing. I've got record covers that I need to do. I've got commissions that I need to do. I've got a ton of work that I need to catch up on because this has just been so mentally draining.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, there'll be art again soon, and I'm really sorry for clogging people's feeds with rage, sort of.
Hey, you need a place to vent, and you can't exactly go to a bar or go to your friends, kick back, have a beer, and have a bitch because
Yeah,
it's all
that's
online. This is the way that we in Melbourne get to communicate with other people.
stage
And
4.
stage 4 lockdown, which is
Yeah.
completely fine. Thanks to Daniel Andrews for taking care of us, taking care of the state. We understand it, but also can international people have a bit of empathy and kind of see it from our point of view of what we are mentally putting ourselves through, what Tristan has been mentally put through.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And look, people have been great, but at the same time, it's just the act of it all is it is is what it is. And not everyone's going to see this, but I think everyone who's watching this and everyone who does watch this has that and is great. And I love all of you. So thank you so much, Clara, for having me on and talking about all this and allowing me to kind of get a lot of this stuff kind of out there and clear a lot of things up that I think are lost in translation of Twitter and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, putting a voice behind it, I think might help people, because I don't want people thinking that I'm, railing against the company in kind of some kind of, get the villagers out towards the castle thing and burn it down. I love reading Marvel's books. I think they're doing great things with things like Conan and stuff like that. Like it's I got friends there.
Yeah.
I want to see it go. I just want to see things done right.
And
Creators and everything else. That's it.
it hurts
And
as a
everyone's been
creator
great.
and a fan to see this
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the Mother Room. This is Tristan Jones. And I guess we're signing off.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for everyone joining us. And I will see you guys all next time around.
And I'll speak to all you guys soon because I'm going to send that book out soon.
Yeah, exactly. Even all of this bullshit happening, he's still being a generous bloke. He's a nice guy.
I try.
Don't screw him over,
I try.
You can follow him, Walmeet Jones, on Twitter
Everything.
and everything now. Yeah?
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
Instagram, you can follow me, Studio Yutani, on Twitter and Insta, and you'll find me as Mother9000 on Twitch, although I'm never on there anymore because I don't have time to play games.
God,
There's
I
a
wish.
pandemic going on. Yeah, so busy now.
Yeah.
All right.
Right, we're stuck at home and can't even play games.
Yeah, I know. Like, I used to play games with Alex White, like, weekly, but now I never get to. We're just so busy.
Life's rough.
All right. I'll catch you later.
Stay safe, guys.